Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 135th episode of the Misfit Gamers. Welcome to the 135th live stream for the MisfitGamersStudios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode, we're going to actually be pretty quick today. We do have one topic that we want to dive into. It's something that I saw on Reddit, and I thought would be a fascinating topic for us to talk about. So we're going to dive into that, and then we're going to be mainly talking about tomorrow's community stream and how we're going to unfold that. We're going to get some information, or at least some feedback from the audience if you guys are here today, and we're going to do that. I know it's been a very stressful and emotional and tension-filled week, so for everybody out there, we are just going to stick to our focus today. We're not here to rock the boat. We're just here to focus on D&D. But as I understand, things are kind of difficult, so, you know, hopefully everybody's doing all right out there. Otherwise, we will get right into our topic. Otherwise, your camera is so fucking dark right now. Hold on.
That is wild.
Mine is fine.
Is it my light?
Yours has never been that bad. No. Your light's fine. Yeah, your light's fine. It must.
That's wild.
I don't know why you have never had this much of an issue with these settings before. Like, your settings are. No, your settings are all the same.
Wild.
That's weird. You have to be at -4 now, and we've both always been at -5. I don't understand that.
That's super weird.
But my camera's also off. Hang on a second. Let's move.
Stand by, friends.
It may just be. Oh, that's. There. Boom. Oh, that's very strange. Even the camera's off. Normally the camera can. Oh, that's because I don't have the stuff up there. No, normally I can get both your couch. Maybe this is. We're working on a chat. Hang on.
Stand by, friends. That's much better.
That's really strange. Yeah, usually I can get more of the side table on your end, but I'm not getting the side table nearly as much this time around.
I feel like it's a little bit further away than it used to be, but
maybe the side table just moved over more. Maybe that's it.
Yeah,
I did clean up in here. It's like very clean.
It is indeed. It's
all right,
fabulous.
all right. So let's check out what's going on. Yeah, so we have our community stream tomorrow, which is going to be fantastic. Really looking forward to that. The community did finally vote. So if
yes,
want
indeed.
To know, let me bring that up. So y'all finally voted. We did run a vote for the community stream, as we do every month, and subletting subclasses won by 1 vote. So we have 4 votes for subletting subclasses, 3 votes for pop culture, 3 votes for Critical Cocktails. We actually had a tie.
Wild.
Critical Cocktails and Pop Culture had a tie at 3 votes, and Lore and Poor had 2 votes. But it looks like subletting subclasses did succeed. So we're going to be going over with that, which I'm actually really excited for. I did want to do a new season or a new series. I at least wanted to try this one out. So tomorrow, what we will be doing is working on the... Oh, there we go. That's the one. We're going to be working on the very first one that basically brought up or what started subletting subclasses, which
what inspired the series in the first place.
Echo Knight. So
yes.
So it was the very... I don't even remember what episode it was on, but we were talking about the Echo Knight in a certain episode. And specifically, I had mentioned somewhere that I would love to see the Echo Knight's ability applied to different classes.
Yes.
But not the same abilities. I don't want a rogue to have the same exact abilities as the Echo Knight, but the idea behind being able to present a phantasmal like illusion of yourself,
yes,
or a echo of yourself, and then do stuff with it. I thought that would be a really unique idea to be able to apply to different classes. And, you know, the idea of a rogue wouldn't be able to attack through it, but, you know, something along the lines of, if you're hiding in shadows, you can project an echo of yourself, so where you're hidden but your echo isn't, or vice versa. Your echo could be projected into a shadow, and then you can only sneak attack through it, right? Like there's different ways you can do it. You know, a wizard echo, where you could make an echo of yourself to where any attack on you has any ranged attack on you has a 50-50 chance of which one it's going to target, right?
Interesting.
Or like a spell effect could have a 50-50 chance. Or imagine a wizard that has an echo where
maybe their echo could hold concentration on the spell.
Or
that would be wild.
That'd be a little bit much. But what I'm thinking is, like, so the Echo Knight, right? They make an echo of themselves, and then they can teleport instantaneously, attack through the echo, then teleport back. So imagine a wizard that could do that against spell attacks, to where they can have an echo on the battlefield, and whenever they're the target of a spell attack, they can instantly go to their echo with a reaction, and then their echo gets attacked by the spell, but then their echo goes away, right? Mm-hmm. Same deal. So it's like they lose the echo, they would still have the burn in action to bring it back. But the idea is, like, a warrior would attack through the echo, a wizard would use the echo to get away from an attack.
Decoy, yeah.
A rogue would use the echo to move across the battlefield. You know, a ranger might use the echo to distract an enemy. So maybe the ranger can only use an echo to get the enemy's attention, but it can't do anything through the echo. But it can attack when the enemy's distracted, right? Maybe a ranger gets advantage on using their Echo Knight. So like they can use their Echo Knight to engage an enemy, and then they have an advantage on that enemy because the enemy thinks that they're attacking the echo, and then they get shot in the back. So these were the things that I thought about in terms of like taking the Echo Knight and being like, what could those abilities look like for other classes? So that's what we're going to do tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to figure that out, but I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't know if we should work on one class and just build a whole Echo subclass underneath one. We don't have enough time. One of the other ideas that I was thinking about is we would both create one and then bring it to stream and then discuss it. But I don't think we're going to have enough time for that. But I don't know if we're going to have enough time to build. I think we should have enough time to build more than one. Like, I think we would have, with a 5-6 hour stream, we should be able to build, but I don't know. I don't know if we're going to be able to build a whole
I think starting with one might be preferable.
I'll be right back. I gotta step away.
I definitely think that there's a lot that that can be said when it comes to these subclasses, and I think that, you know, coming together and building one, that's kind of where I'm leaning right now, because okay, if we both try to make one, I feel like that might be a lot for one person to do, and especially because, you know, bouncing ideas off of people and a lot of tangents we can go off on, you know, it would slow down the process for each of us. So, I mean, if we do that when we're all working on one, I think that might be functional enough, but we can experiment. Let's put it that way, you know? Depending on how smoothly things go and how easily we can transition, because again, the question's going to have to be, are we trying to make a 5th edition homebrew subclass just like we get submitted to us? Are we trying to have all of the features, all of the balancing? Are we trying to put all of these things into these subclasses, or are we just trying to visualize what a feel would be like? Because we're just trying to visualize what a feel would be like, I think each of us doing a subclass would be fine.
So how about this, based on what I was hearing from you, because I do agree with that. Like, it could be a lot for one person to do, plus both of us reviewing 2 different subclasses. Like, you would bring yours, I'd review it. I'd bring mine, you'd review it. Like, that could be a lot. But now that you bring up that too, I'm also wondering if we were to approach it together.
Greetings, Hoilepa.
What's up, man? How you doing? There's a situation of, I kind of like the idea of going through it together because, yeah, there's going to be a lot if we were to do it solo. But if we were to approach it together, we could still do 2 different versions. If we were to do it together, like let's say we chose Rogue as this sublet class, we could do the stream where we do 2 different versions, where we start from the beginning at level 1 and build the subclass out. But we start to diverge after level 3, where we build the subclass according to Wizards of the Coast standards, just like the subclass that gets submitted to us. So we follow the Rogue subclass template. But maybe we also at the same time add in what we think a Rogue subclass could better benefit. Because we've always talked about how some subclasses don't upgrade
I'm here
properly,
for that.
right? We don't like the level ups. We don't like when they get certain things. They end too soon and don't get proper capstones, or they just don't call back to certain things. So what if we did a sublet where we could go with the Rogue and we would build it as Wizard of the Coast would build it, right? Build it based off that template. But we could have a secondary one being like, you know what? I would really love if at level 8 we added something here. So we have 2. We have the one that follows the pure path that every Rogue follows, but then we have the version that we think would be the most appropriate level up. And then we can give people an option. We can say, hey, here's the official, according to the 5th edition standard level, subclass. But then here's what we really think the subclass should do. And I think that would be a lot of fun, because if we continue doing that through subletting subclasses, let's face it, it's more content. It's more stuff that we can provide.
Sure.
But it's more about what we constantly think, right? We constantly say that Wizard of the Coast has a very weird balancing when it comes to certain subclasses. So to be able to not only make one that we think balances with their rules, but then to show people what we think a subclass should be.
And I think that'll be good, because the more of these that we do, then the more of an overall idea for each of these classes that we will recognize that, oh, this is what a new standard for this class could look like, a new way, because that's
more content for the ADMG.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that'll be great. Okay, I'm here for it.
Yeah, we're there with you, man. I just saw chat. Yeah, it's life.
Indubitably.
We all move on though, you know what I mean? Like, just like a campaign, just like a D&D story,
Exactly.
we must all continue, regardless of
I will be right back.
Of what happens, regardless of how difficult it gets. This story must go on. My camera is so fucked up right now. Hang on a second. I'm gonna fix my camera. That's a little better. All right. So, so we're gonna talk about some subletting subclasses in a little bit, but let's get to our main topic for tonight. So this is something that I actually found on Reddit. It was actually a Reddit post that I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to kind of bring to chat, or just to bring to today, because I know that we weren't going to go very long today, and we wanted to talk about tomorrow's community stream. But the Reddit post that I saw was very fascinating, because basically it proposition everybody of how important are official updates and how much do people care. And then it was this multi-paragraph, Reddit post basically about someone who's played with D&D for a very long time, who has played throughout the various editions and who has found their niche, right? They've found the edition and all of the rule sets that they really like, that they appreciated, and that worked for them. And they basically wanted to get a public consensus on how does the general community feel about the need to keep up with the current standard versus the comfortability with just sticking with what you know. And this really resonated with me. And I read through a lot of the comments, and there was quite a bit of discourse going on, but it really resonated with me because as someone who plays primarily in second edition, who loves Forgotten Realms and who loves the core mechanics of second edition, but who also recognizes the value of all of the editions, right? As someone who has an open world that incorporates all editions and various mechanics from each edition, but also understands the value of a core rule set and consistency, I found this Reddit post really fascinating because I felt that this is a question that doesn't get asked enough, but it digs right at the heart of the D&D community, which is, I think, the bigger question to this idea of, are keeping up with the updates important. I think this question isn't so much about the updates and about whether or not you want to keep up to date with, the game, but I think the question digs more to the heart of the D&D community, which is D&D equivalent to its current state, or is D&D an ideology? Right? Like I look at D&D as an ideology. When I say I play D&D, I don't mean that I play the current 5th edition version. And I don't necessarily mean that I play 100% by the book D&D. But it means that most of my foundational understanding of storytelling, TTRPG, rule sets, dice, and mechanics are founded in primarily D&D core rulebooks, right? But when I think about the idea of whether or not it's important to keep up with it, it kind of makes a more fundamental idea of what is the ideology of D&D? Is it about what is current and everything that's come before it is just an obsolete version of the game, kind of like Magic, right? There are blocks that eventually become obsolete that you can't play anymore. Is that how you view D&D, or is D&D an amalgamation of generations of play styles that you can choose from, that you can decide? Like, imagine like you think about football. Let's talk about pro sports. You think about football nowadays, and football has a very strategic way to be played. It has rules, it has guidelines, it has safety measures, it has equipment that's required. It is literally down to every fiber of the playing field. Every blade of grass is basically accounted for in current football. So it's not like you can just decide, I want to go join a league of 1960s football, where it's leather helmets and a true pigskin and no padding, right? Like you can go play, you can go play, oh man, my brain just completely blanked. It's not football, not like soccer, but what's the other one? Rugby. It's like, you could go play rugby, but that's not quite the same as playing a 1960s version of football, right? But for me, that's when I think of this question of how important are updates. I mean, my first knee-jerk reaction was they're not important at all for someone like me because I game in an older edition. But that's not really true, because updates are important. I keep up with them. I want to know what the modern gamer and the modern D&D player, expects. But I also want to know what D&D has done. I want to know the balancing. I want to know those things, and I want to incorporate what I believe in. I want to incorporate what makes sense to me while also making my plotline and everything good. But yeah, it's to me, I love this question because it fundamentally breaks down more than just a question of, are the current rules the most important? But to me, it's more of a question of, what is D&D, right? Like, what is D&D to the DM and to the players? Is it a set of rules? Is it the guidelines that you follow and the mechanics that you use? Or is D&D the ideology of gameplay? Right? Like, you think of again, you think of a Souls-like. We use that term a lot now. Souls-like. And some people think that diminishes a game. They think that's more of like when you say a clone. Like the two terms I see in gaming, right? Souls-like and GTA clone are the two biggest terms I would say to represent how a game, or roguelike, right? So those are three: Souls-like, roguelike, and GTA clone are like the three gaming terminologies that are out there to help express what a game expectations are. But some people find those terms derogatory, as in, if you call it a GTA clone, you're not giving it it's rightful. You're just basically saying it's a knockoff. But that's not what GTA clone means. That's not what Souls-like means. It means that these are the pioneers of a gaming style, right? These Souls, games pioneered the excessive difficulty of games, the meticulous learning of minute details, right? When you think of a GTA clone, you're thinking of an open world with missions, but side missions, but I can go anywhere at any time, and almost everything is interactable, right? And it's crime based. Like, that's what you think of a GTA clone. It's not derogatory. It's not saying the game is lesser than GTA, but you have to recognize that's what it came from. Like, that's the ideology, right? Like that's the predecessor to it. And that's kind of how I feel about D&D. Is when I think of D&D, when I say D&D, I don't mean 2nd edition. I don't mean 5th edition. When I say D&D, I mean a specific subset of TTRPG. I mean TTRPG, but it also means there's a subset of it, right? It's not scientific based. It's not modern. It's archaic. It's sci-fi fantasy. It's true fantasy with magic, with maybe a little bit of sci-fi involved, because you have like spelljammers and whatnot. But D&D indicates a genre, in my opinion. It's not a rule set. It's not a mechanic based. I guess when I say D&D, I look at it as a genre. Like Call of Cthulhu is a TTRPG. TTRPGs are a genre. But I think D&D is more than just a catalog of an IP. I think D&D has now to this day become more than an IP. It's become a genre. And maybe that's where I want to kind of just like talk about like this topic of, when I think of, is D&D important? Is it important to keep up with D&D? No, I don't think it's important to keep up with the most current rules. I think it's beneficial. I don't think it's important. I don't think it's necessary, because to me at this point, D&D is more of a genre than it is a set gameplay mechanic or a set of rules, right? Like when I say I'm going to go play a video game, you have a general idea of what I mean. But if I say I'm going to go play Final Fantasy versus I'm going to go play Street Fighter, those two genres will tell you what I'm going to go play. If I'm going to go play a RPG video game like Final Fantasy, or if I'm going to go play a fighting game like Street Fighter, it's going to tell you a lot. But I kind of feel like that's more or less where D&D is now. Someone saying that they play D&D isn't so much an identifier of I play this game, as it feels more nowadays of this is the style of TTRPG I like. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a lot of people don't feel that way, but that's where I'm at. I feel like D&D has evolved into its own genre of this fantasy-based storytelling TTRPG. And yes, it has an overall arcane concept, but I think it's just expanded. Like when you hear of Call of Cthulhu, you're very specific on the type of world you're going to be in, right? But D&D doesn't necessarily immediately tell you where you're going to be, right? It doesn't tell you the type of world you're going to interact with. It may tell you the races that you'll expect to see, the classes, like the mechanics, but it doesn't really tell you the setting. Like there's so much that D&D can be, right? It can be archaic, it can be rural, it can be inner city, it can be floating city, it can be spacefaring. So saying that you're going to play D&D doesn't tell me anything, right? I need to know so much more than just D&D. But if you say I'm going to play Call of Cthulhu, there's no question about what you're going to play. I have no question about the type of, it's not just the mechanics that I understand. I know the gameplay. I may not know if you're going to be in a mansion or a town, but I understand that it's going to be this dark, kind of horrific, eldritch type of setting. But with D&D, I feel like it's expanded so far that just saying you play D&D is almost as saying I play an FPS. And maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in chat if you guys disagree. But that's kind of how I feel. Is D&D is almost like saying I'm a video gamer who plays FPS video games instead of playing I'm a video gamer who plays Call of Duty. Right? That's how I feel like D&D has become. It's not so much saying I play Call of Duty, it's saying I play an FPS. Because if you say I play Call of Cthulhu, that's like telling me you play Call of Duty or Tarkov or other, like you're telling me the specific type. But if you just say you play D&D, I feel like it only gives me a general idea. It gives me a very good general idea, but it doesn't give me any specifics.
And I very much agree. I think there's a lot to be said on this topic, specifically when we're talking about whether we want to keep up with what's happening. I was introduced to D&D through you and through second edition, but then I got lured is the wrong word, but I got brought into DMing. Yeah, a little bit. All right, listen, don't judge me. I got brought into DMing by a group of people that really wanted to play. And, most of what they knew or had experience with was all 5th edition stuff. So, that's where I created my foundation. But to answer the actual question, I kind of want to go back to something that I don't know if we've ever actually talked about on stream before, but there's this weird house rule, and most people would think it's like benign or irrelevant, but whenever we play at your table, like when you're doing your rolls so that people don't get frisky with rolls that they just don't want to have, you got to make a rule for yourself. And it's basically like, if I roll the dice and it like falls on the floor or something like that, am I going to take it as it lies, or am I going to re-roll it?
For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, so this is a rule that I have. It's a house rule that I typically implore with High Point, where certain types of situations will dictate future rolls. So in this particular case, it's the best thing. If you roll your dice in High Point and the first time you roll off the table, you were given a choice. Take it or re-roll it. And in that moment, every player knows, because I tell them, this is your only time to make this choice. If you roll the dice and it rolls off the floor, and right then and there I say you take it or re-roll it, and you decide to take it, I tell you before you do, from here on out, you are deciding whether or not you take every fallen roll. Because I kind of like that. I'm like, I don't like the idea that you're going to take what's best for you. I like the idea that you are going to be consistent. It's basically like, that's the promise I make to you, that my rules will be consistent. So it's almost like the ask that I give you, that I ask of you, is make yours consistent. If you roll it off the table and you're like, I'm going to re-roll it because I don't care what it says, it's fundamentally a re-roll.
It needs to be, great. It needs to be in my.
But if you're going to roll and go, oh my God, that's a nat 20, I'm going to take it. Well, then fuck it. You're taking everything that rolls off the table, and there's no question we're all going to, like, because that's that thing. If you're only doing it in the gut instinct, it's going to be a consequence because you should have re-rolled it. But if you recognize, like, that's just how I roll, man. If it rolls, wherever it rolls, however it rolls, that's what I take. I love that.
And there's a lot of people
if that's your vibe, that's your vibe. But so for those of you who don't know, that's something that I do in High Point.
This is just an analogy, but that mentality, that concept is how I feel like a lot of people look at D&D. And what I mean by that is you made an inference earlier about people who look at D&D from the perspective of, I'm here to like 100% follow this rule set. And I think there's another group of people who, if there's anybody who likes to have house rules, for instance, right? Versus the people that go out and play stuff like Adventurers League, where you have to be in this universally accepted rule set. I think that there are a lot of people that want to play that type of game, right? They want to play the game where everything is 100% you know, by the book, by the rules. I want to be able to be as rules lawyery as possible. I want everyone to be following the same narrative that I believe that they should be playing. And those are the people who I feel like very much keep up with what every new edition says when 2024 becomes 2026 or 2020 or 2030 or whatever,
or 6th edition.
Exactly. Like however it continues on, they will continue to adapt with what's new. They will continue to bring out the forefront of the new standard, right? And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I will say that there are other people who do things like create house rules because they believe there are certain quality of life aspects to the way that they play the game that they don't want to live without. So they create a rule that enables those things to occur. Like a lot of people with getting nat 20s and how your nat 20s can feel more like nat 20s and less like, oh, I rolled two ones on this crit, right? And I feel like I got nothing. So like people will make so that those things can feel real for their players, right? So I think that anytime you want to augment the game, that's what these things are. These are augmentation options. You've talked a lot about in the past when we are looking at like the original books, like back in first edition, AD&D, all of that, where they're saying, hey, this is just a foundation for you guys to build on and play with, right? It's not D&D first edition and D&D second edition. It's D&D, here's all the options that you have of doing things.
And we're going to continue to improve it and try to change things to make it operate better.
If you really, really wanted to, now granted, it would take some fucking doing, but if you really wanted to, you could try and import THAC0 into 5th edition because you wanted...
So the thing is I truly believe it wouldn't be that difficult. It's just literally more work than anyone wants to do. But realistically, implementing THAC0 wouldn't be game breaking. It would just be more work than
I really don't think so. I really don't think it would be that bad.
No, you know, and the modifiers would still work. Like the modifier, if you get a plus 30 to hit, you just get a negative 30 to hit, right? Like it literally just works in the opposite direction. Like it's not as complicated. But again, like now that you've been talking about that, like I also think about like what we talked about before, right? Where think about we're on like what, Street Fighter 14?
Sure.
Like think about like the actual Street Fighter, we're on like 14 after 30 years. But there are still tournaments. There are still legitimized paying tournaments for Street Fighter 2. The old original arcade Street Fighter 2 still has paying tournaments where the first place gets thousands of dollars. And there are other tournaments for very like all the Tekkens. There are different tournaments for the different Tekkens. There are different tournaments for the different Mortal Kombats. So to say that like, oh, there can only be a competitive on the newest game really does like think about how many games that are 10 plus years old that still have that have other games or other updates, but yet there are still like speedrunners. Like GTA speedrunning, like because I watch Dark Viper AU all the time. GTA speedrunning is still like GTA 5 speedrunning is still huge. GTA 4 speedrunning, GTA 3 speedrunning, Vice City, all of these games are still speedrun to this day. And yet we're on GTA 5 and GTA 6 is about to come out, but yet people aren't stopping getting better at these older games, right? And that's where I'm like, that's the better analogy is especially in a world where D&D and Wizards of the Coast attempted to bring in the video game players. It's almost ironic that by doing so, they also like, what's the word I'm looking for? They almost like, what's the word I'm looking for? They almost like extrematize, like that's the word I'm looking for. But basically it's like
exaggerate.
Like they almost like, so video gamers, right? Video gamers appreciate the game they like, right? It doesn't matter what version it is. Like I love Final Fantasy 7. I don't care if it's Final Fantasy 16, 17 right now. I like Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah.
I will play Final Fantasy 7. That's the game mindset. That's the gamer mindset. It doesn't matter how many versions of the game come out, you will play the game you like. But when Wizards of the Coast brought video gamers over, it's almost like they took those gamers and said, ignore your instinct to play with the version you like and only keep up with what we give you. Because that's like the gamers came over for 5th edition, right? Like 4th edition and 5th edition really tried to bring them over. 4th edition brought them over, 5th edition kept them, right? 4th edition caught their interest. They changed it to 5th edition to keep them. But unlike a regular gamer, like if you give someone a video game that they love, they're more likely to play the prequels. They will go back and play a game that's a prequel on an earlier console just to understand the story and the development, but people don't do that with D&D. People don't ever go to 2nd edition after playing 5th to learn about D&D the way they would have played Tekken 2 to learn about Tekken 7. People don't do it, but what's ironic is a good majority of the D&D players came from the video game world, but we almost completely destroyed the ideology of playing the various versions, but that's probably because D&D is so complex.
I feel like there's less incentive to do that, like, because at the end of the day, the different versions, like the story you're telling is up to the DM, and like the modules you go, like granted you could do like really, really old 1st edition modules if those guys are still out there. But I mean, it's I feel like a lot of the times the mindset becomes like, imagine how many people would go back. Well,
I think it's availability, because think about this, like Metal Gear Solid, right? Most people know the Metal Gear, like most people who played the earlier Metal Gears have an interest in playing some of the older ones, right? Like especially like some of the PS1, like Metal Gear Solid, the original. But a lot of people don't realize that Metal Gear came out on the Sega. So I can understand that not a lot of people are going to go out of their way to play the Sega version of the game that really was popularized by PlayStation, right? They'll probably go back to the PlayStation version. But the difference is like the PlayStation version is still available. It's still accessible. With D&D, by the time 4th and 5th edition really became popular, the earlier editions weren't easily accessible. You couldn't just go play 1st edition, right?
Yeah.
So
even now, that's really hard to do.
I understand why, but it's fascinating that it's not just the why, it's not just the availability, but when you look at how people, the people that came from video games and had this open mindset of playing all video games and all, iterations of a video game that they loved, it's fascinating that when they came to D&D, they lost that. It's almost like they were programmed to be like, hey, you love video games. Here's a video gameized, here's a gamified tabletop. But let's ignore everything beforehand. Like let's go against your instinct to, because again, you can't just pick up a game and play for 10 hours and beat it and go, oh, that's what 1st edition is like.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy to just pick it up and just play through a tutorial, right? There's an investment in each level, but it's one of those rare instances where when you get the opportunity, and maybe that's why there's a part of me that sticks to 2nd edition, because maybe I feel like somewhere deep down, I'm one of the last bastions because again, when people like me go away, when DMs like me, like all of the veteran DMs that I grew up playing with, when they're gone, when someone like me, who in modern day is playing an edition that's older than they are, right? Like 2nd edition is damn near as old, if not older than me. When people like me stop doing that, does 2nd edition just stop existing? Is it just that was a game that we thought about once? Because again, Street Fighter 2, like Street Fighter 2 Alpha, hands down one of the most popular games in all of like fighting history, will never go out of style. People will always be talking about Street Fighter 2 Alpha because it was such an iconic game, and people will still play it, right? They'll still pick it up. If there's an emulator, people will still go back just to see what Street Fighter 2 was compared to Street Fighter 15. But I don't see that happening for D&D. If people like me aren't out here introducing people to D&D 2nd edition for their first time, like again, that's what most of my players are people who never played D&D beforehand. Most people who play 5th edition first have no interest in what they consider backpedaling into 2nd edition to play with me. But when people like me don't exist, what happens to D&D Classic? Because I feel like it's not like video games where people are interested in playing the classics.
I do understand what you're saying. I really do. And I know that it is challenge. I guess I look at it a little bit different, and the only thing I'll say is for me, I don't feel like the older editions necessarily get lost in the newer ones. And I really love the history ofs that we do, because I genuinely think a lot of the times you get to see how the different editions learn from what they were and how they decided to move forward. And so there was always a reason for them doing what they did.
Right.
There was always a reason for why they shifted things, they changed things. And so I think that a lot of what 5th edition is today is because of 2nd edition. And so I don't necessarily think, like, yes, the edition itself is not as prevalent, is not as used, but I genuinely look at D&D as kind of like you were talking about earlier. It's like it's its own spirit, it's its own mindset. It's the attitude of a D&D player. It's the attitude of people getting together to play the stories. For me, genuinely, it almost doesn't matter what the rule set is.
Yeah, it's not about the mechanics, and that's where, you know, and I agree with that, because with the proliferation of homebrewing, the mechanics don't matter, because it's the motto, that's a secondary motto beyond, you know, we have our primary motto, which is beyond the book.
Yeah.
But our secondary motto essentially is, if everyone's having fun, you're not doing it wrong.
100%.
And
100%.
Realistically, that's kind of what you're calling to, is that it doesn't matter the rule sets you're playing with. It's the spirit of D&D is a story-based TTRPG in a magic fantasy world.
I'm telling you,
like, that's really the basics of D&D.
So this you introduced me to D&D proper, but there was a time when I was like in high school where I would just go into the Taco Bell down at the corner, and I would meet up with these random people. I don't even remember who introduced me to them in the first place, but we just sit at a table and talk. We wouldn't roll dice. We wouldn't do any, we would just sit at a table and talk. And that to me was my first introduction to D&D, but like nobody else did that. Like that didn't exist anywhere other than that table.
Yeah.
Like the way we just flowed and did what we did. But like that to me is the spirit of D&D, is just people getting together to create a story, to create a journey that you get to go on together and you get to build with each other. And it's truly phenomenal.
Yeah. And that's how I feel about it too. It's like, again, watching that Reddit, I mean, I mentioned this like almost a half hour ago, but yeah, watching that Reddit thread and just really diving into like what people really felt about the updates and the official rules and everything. It was kind of refreshing, because a lot of people, while they recognize that, like you said, the updates are the polished rule sets, I agree with that, but part of me is like, that's fair, but only to a point, because it's not really, like we've talked about, 5th edition isn't polished. 5th edition isn't the end all be all, and it's not everything is improved. Not everything, like 3rd edition did amazing things that 2nd edition never thought about, and 5th edition completely ignores. But 2nd edition did things like psionics that no other edition even touched. Like literally tipped their toe into areas that just no one ever even thought about and has never thought about since. So that's like where I'm at too. It's like, if I only ever looked at 5th edition, I'd never know about psionics, right? But if I never knew about 3rd edition, I wouldn't know about prestige classes. If I had never played OD&D, I wouldn't understand I wouldn't appreciate subclasses if I had never played OD&D. Like, people, like, truthfully, people take subclasses for granted so much in 5th edition, because you have no idea how hard it was to be creative, to create your own brand new character from scratch, from just the feats and the things that you could do. And now you have subclasses that tell you everything. Like, you don't have to come up with a goddamn thing. You just basically be like, at this level you get this, at this level you get this, and by the time you're handed everything, you don't need to come up with anything other than what order you're going to do these moves in. But you're not coming up with anything. You're not creating anything. You're just repeating what you were told you can do. And so while I do agree with you that over the years they've always tried to improve, that improvement has always been biased against the collective. But it's kind of like in most other situations, the collective doesn't always know what's best for themselves, right? It's like, look at movies. You watch how movies evolve, and then you watch how movies fall to the victim of the critics and the audience. And then when a movie studio finally does exactly what the audience has asked them for, right? They're putting out blockbuster after blockbuster, and everyone's shitting on it. And then they finally do exactly what the audience does, and then they fucking tank. Right? And it's a movie nobody wants to fucking watch, or a TV show that nobody wants to watch, but it's like, this is exactly what you all asked for. And it's like, because the consumer doesn't know what they want. Like, more often than not,
that's so wild, but that is so true.
Doesn't know, like,
they really don't.
Like ask the average person to write a TV show like pilot that they would enjoy watching, and it's gonna fucking suck because people don't know what they want. They know what they like when they see it. The average person knows what they like when they see it and knows what they don't like when they see it. But to ask them what they truly want, that's the problem. And that's where I'm like, yes, 5th edition has made strides, and it's made so many improvements, and we've had so many quality of life and balances and all of this other stuff. But at the end of the day, 5th edition falls victim to the same thing that every new edition falls victim to. And it's popular opinion. And popular opinion, while it is the best way to make money, is not always the best choice, because popular opinion does not always reflect the best balance, the best usage. You know, it's kind of like what we talk about, where so many players nowadays feel entitled to be the end all be all uber hero. And that's never what D&D has been around. But if any DM out there, I guarantee you, if you make your entire campaign, your one shot, literally about them being the end all be all hero, it will be the most boring fucking campaign you run. And I do mean that 100%. If you run a campaign where your people are basically Superman or Shazam or Black Adam or Gladiator, and you're just literally no one can fucking touch you, that is going to be the most boring campaign they've ever run. Every roll is going to kill the enemy instantly. Every battle's going to go away with hardly any HP loss. Every level up's going to feel useless. Like, literally, you cannot run a game where the people are untouchable. The players won't have fun. So it's that same thing. You don't want to watch a movie where there's no risk to the superhero.
One Punch Man, exactly.
Yeah. Well, no, but I disagree though, because One Punch Man at least has character development. It's more about the evolution of the person.
But imagine One Punch Man
with
without that. Like,
but yes, but One Punch Man
walking through just
punch is so
punch.
boring. The only reason One Punch Man works is because the struggle is not about the mechanics. It's about him dealing with it.
And see, that what you just said is what I feel so, and this is just me on my little high horse. That's what I feel like so many people miss about Superman. Most people just hate on Superman because he's a boring superhero.
I've always hated Superman.
But that, what you just mentioned about One Punch Man, his story is not about his struggle with strength.
Yes.
His story is about his struggle with human nature.
I agree.
That to me is what made him one of the most relatable heroes that I grew up with, because so much of the interactions that you have that you're trying to navigate.
I do not disagree at all with what you have just said. I just think Marvel did it better with Spider-Man. Like, when you really want to talk about a superhero who struggled with being a real person with power, Spider-Man did it better than Superman. Superman, yes. Here's my biggest problem.
I get why you go there.
It's because, yes, you are 100% correct. Superman has no real challenge outside of being a person. His challenge is being a person, right? It's his challenge with what's good and evil. It's his challenge with society. Like, Superman is not about him being a superhero, but about him navigating how to use his power. I get that. But at the same time, it never felt like there was really a struggle. It felt like more of like, you're just a weird outsider who's just trying to fit in, but not in a I feel like you kind of way. It just felt like, yeah, you're like a jock who wants to be a nerd. You know what I mean? Like it always felt like yeah, you were absolutely right. He always told a better story about it being not about being a superhero, but about the challenges. But when I look at how Marvel did that with Spider-Man, where it was, here's a guy who has powers, but he's still just a regular, everyday high schooler who has to get through life and go through relationships. He has to know the real, like, he knows his boss is the evil villain, but he's also his boss. And it's like, we're regular people, but we're also superhero, super villain outside. Like, it felt like I could relate to Spider-Man, not because he's a hero, but I was able to relate to Spider-Man's struggles way more than Superman. And I get you. Superman was done well for what it tried to do, but I don't think DC hit the spot for me.
I get that. I will say this. I feel like, from my perspective, they're meant to hit different spots.
I don't disagree with that.
I think that they're meant to hit different places, and like people who come from, like, I don't know, like, imagine the struggles, because I imagine the struggles of growing up in the ghetto versus the struggles of growing up in the suburbs. It's not like there isn't things that both people struggle with, but a lot of people think that the severity makes it different. But
I think I don't think I've ever thought about this before, but you know what it is? You know what I really think why I have a problem with DC over Marvel? Is, again, they both tell the same stories, they both tell the same struggles, but here's the difference. Marvel feels more realistic and relatable as a day-to-day modern life. Like, as you grew up with Marvel, like, it felt more about the struggles of day-to-day life, whereas DC was always more of the greater moral struggles, right? Like, DC was, you never really felt like any of the, like, again, think about all of the DC heroes. Most of them you never really felt were in danger, but they taught you the right lesson, right? Like Batman, Superman, Green Lantern. These weren't they were uber heroes, but it wasn't about them maybe dying, right? You never worried about Superman dying. You know, you never worried about Batman dying or killing anybody, but it was about that choice. It was about, I'm here to uphold justice, or I'm here to protect those that can't protect themselves. It was, DC was all about
the new fairy tales.
Yeah, DC was all about the greater morals of the story. They were very, I don't want to say Bible or biblical, but they were all about the story, right? They were all about the lesson. Whereas I feel like with Marvel was about not just the overall lesson, but the life lesson, right? Does that make more sense? DC felt more of the moral lesson. Marvel was about the life lesson. Marvel made me feel like I understood how to navigate the real world, and maybe DC taught me how I should be internally. Like, DC taught me I should be a good person. I should always look for the right thing, and I should always stand up for the right thing. But Marvel taught me that that's not always that's not always easy. Like think about it. DC always taught you should always stand up, no matter who you are. Be like Superman.
It feels like DC taught you the simple truth and Marvel taught you the hard truth.
Yes, because DC taught you, doesn't matter, you always be the right person. Marvel said it's going to suck, but it's always better to be the right person. That's the lesson I think is different. When you watch Marvel, you know it's going to be a struggle, but you know the outcome is worth it. With you watch DC, you just know it's the right thing to do. And that's, I think, my problem with the morals, right? It's not enough to tell someone it's just the right thing to do. It's not enough to tell someone be like Superman. It's not enough to tell someone to be like Batman and to be the Justice Warrior, and because that's the right thing. That's what I feel like DC is. It's just telling you to do the right thing because it's the right thing. Marvel, I feel, tells you this is the right thing regardless if it's easy. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be okay. And it's going to suck. But it's the right thing because the goal is what we want, right? It's not just the right thing because it's the right thing. It's the right thing because the end result is what we all want. And maybe that's just my bias, but I think that's why I've always had my line in the sand between DC and Marvel is DC is fine. The stories are fine. The characters are fine. It's whatever. But at the end of the day, I don't connect to the golden rule storybook. The do unto others like you want to do unto you. That's not reality. Reality is that good decisions are hard. Reality is that doing the right thing sucks sometimes. The reality is that good people don't always succeed. Batman or Superman tells me that the good will always succeed. Marvel tells me that good is always the better option regardless if it succeeds. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Marvel doesn't always win. The good guys don't always win, overall they do, but they don't always win every battle. DC
doesn't articulate that
lose.
to you.
You have moments where you're like, what's going to happen? But you don't ever lose. Marvel loses. They lose battles. They never win the war. DC, there's no battles that are ever lost. Like it's always the battle's not over yet. But with Marvel, battles are over and lost. But the war, they tell you, like, again, Xavier, his whole school is about, it's not about being right. It's not about beating Magneto. It's about proving that this is the way we should live. It's about, Xavier was all about acceptance, and Magneto was all about, we need to protect ourselves. It's better to be forceful than respected, right? It's better to be feared than respected. Xavier was all about
there are plenty of people that even now don't think Magneto's a bad guy.
Exactly.
There are plenty of people who's like, Magneto is not a villain. He is a hero.
And into some of the, and again, I get it because he's on the side of the mutants, but his ideology was, we are better than everybody else and it should be us over them. And in his ideology was, again, Xavier was about, we should all be accepted. And Magneto was about, well, we're better, so fuck everybody else. And that was the thing I loved about that. But then again, you go back to Superman versus Zod. I'm going to take over the world because I'm evil. Well, no, you're not, because I like humans. That was the fight between Zod and Superman, was purely, I'm evil, so I'm going to take over because that's all I want. And well, I believe want you to do that.
I believe that there is depth there, because when I look at where Zod is coming from, thank you, Aki. When I look at where Zod is coming from, I see somebody who has been brought up and trained to believe that they are superior, kind of like Omni-Man from Invincible, right? Like their whole attitude and whole mindset is just, we are superior. So like, I should be able to take what I want. I should be able to, if I need a planet, then I get to take your planet and I get to turn it into whatever I want it to turn it into, because power means that power is. And I think that there are so many people, that can identify with evil that looks like that in our world today. Like that, it's all over the place.
I don't disagree with that. I just feel like with Superman, it's not so much about, I feel like it's more about good versus evil than about the struggle that it is to be good versus evil. Like, I feel like it's just, DC feels more about always choose good because good is better than evil. Whereas Marvel kind of shows that it's not always the easiest choice, but it's the best choice.
I get that. And I will also say it feels like a lot of the times that DC's stuff is potentially more global, whereas Marvel stuff feels a lot more personal.
Like local.
Yes.
And that makes sense too, because also, and again, Marvel feels like there's Marvel always told me that there are consequences. Like Marvel always had things that didn't work out. DC, Superman literally turned back fucking time to do whatever he wanted. Like DC doesn't let the wrong thing happen, because to DC, good always prevails. Whereas with Marvel, good is always the right choice, regardless if it prevails, right? Like there are plenty of Marvel stories that ended bad or didn't turn out good. But at the end of the day, it was the right choice that we had to make, even if it was the hard choice. Like, I mean, dude, imagine how, like imagine the whole, Infinity War, right? So, like, imagine Tony Stark. Tony Stark made the hardest fucking choice in the Marvel universe. He literally self-sacrificed. It was the hardest choice to prove that it was the right thing to do, but it was self-sacrifice. That is a story that I get with Marvel all the time. It's the right choice is not always the easiest, but DC, it's not that they're saying that every choice is always perfect and flawless, but they always painted it in a way of, it doesn't matter, good's always better. Whereas Marvel made it feel realistic of, it's not just about choosing right.
You have to be a little bit of a Trekkie to get this one, but DC was unwilling to approach the Kobayashi Maru, while Marvel made it their entire plot.
Yes, I 100% agree. Yes, DC doesn't want to believe the Kobayashi Maru is valid.
They just steered away from it. They did what
No, they were Captain Kirk. DC is Captain Kirk, whereas Marvel is everybody else. Marvel accepts that there's a shit idea. DC was Captain Kirk and said, no, we can fucking fake it. We can break the system and we can make it work for our way.
We'll make it.
DC is Captain Kirk.
Interesting.
They broke the system to say that there is no bad. I can always win. Because that's what Captain Kirk did. He said, no, I'm going to win. This whole thing is about me winning. I'm going to win. But Marvel was like, sometimes winning is the hard choice. DC doesn't want that. DC doesn't want the hard choice.
That is exactly what what's his name? Spock was trying to do with the whole test is like, how do you handle a no-win situation?
And that's the thing. Marvel wants you to believe that there are situations that are no-win, but you still have to do the right thing. Whereas DC wants you to believe, no, there's always a right way. And that's the problem, is there's not always a right way. There's always a better way. Like, maybe that's right. Maybe that's the difference.
Interesting.
DC feels like there's always a right way. Marvel feels like there's always a best way. And that's different. Marvel isn't always the right way. It's the best way. Maybe that's the better way to colloquialize it.
Interesting.
Because like there's so many like how many times has the good guys been tempted in Marvel? Like truly, like anytime DC is tempted, Batman, Superman are tempted, they're immediately like, no, I would never even think about evil.
I will say there were some pretty dark storylines where Superman goes ham after the Joker tricks him into killing his wife.
But it takes few and far between. The overall ideology is that Batman and Superman they don't negotiate with terrorists. They're the symbols.
Things. They're the All Might.
Yes.
They're the freaking All Might. They're the symbol of justice. They have to be infallible. You can't see me in my weakened state.
Yes.
You can't see, because then you lose hope, you lose faith.
Marvel, the good guys, will make deals with the bad guys because it's not the easiest choice to make, but sometimes you got to do what's not okay. You got to help the bad guys. You got to let the bad guys help you. Like Marvel did that shit. Marvel did that thing where Magneto and Xavier would team up, after this, we're going to go back to war. But for right now, this is the right choice. When did Lex Luthor and Superman team up for a greater good?
It's happened.
Like, I'm sure it's happened.
Specifically in that one that I was just mentioning, Lex Luthor and Batman go up against Superman.
Right, but Lex Luthor and Superman teaming up for the greater good is not common. It may have happened in one or two stories. Sure. I will tell you, I could probably pull out 100 different examples from Marvel where the good and bad guys team up, but it'll be one or two where Superman teamed up with Lex Luthor. That's my point, is like DC doesn't want you to believe that there's a gray area. DC doesn't believe in gray. It's a good or bad. Whereas Marvel like you said, Marvel doesn't. DC paints Lex Luthor as evil and Superman is good. That is how DC paints it. Marvel does not paint Magneto as bad. He is the opposition, but they don't necessarily paint him as bad, because every time you talk to him, it's like he's either psychotic or he's making oddly good sense, right? He's that one that you want to hate, but you can't deny.
Even Thanos, like you're meant to believe that he's got good intentions behind his evil ways.
It's hard to argue with, right? But you can't do that with Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor isn't a evil villain that you're presented with that you're like, he makes some good points, like maybe we should just kill the one guy that can protect the universe
I'll say the closest you might get is like Mr. Freeze, who's doing it for his wife. But he just wants to save his lady.
And that's fine. But again, it's still very selfish. It's still he's not trying to protect the world. He's not coming up with some cure for cancer. He just wants to save his wife. Now, granted, it's selfless. He doesn't care about himself. But
sure.
And I love that. I love that about Batman. But you're never rooting for, like, Mr. Freeze. Like, you're like, I sympathize with him, but you're never like, oh no, that argument, I'm on the side of Mr. Freeze. Whereas I've definitely been like, Magneto, stop making so much goddamn sense. I don't want to be on your side. Like, I don't like the shit that you're doing, but god damn it, you make sense, and I can't hate you. Like, Magneto's one of my favorite characters because I can't hate him. I have no love for Lex Luthor. There's nothing about that type of evil, corrupt villain that I care about, because it's too cliche. It's too, everything behind Lex Luthor is purely selfish and has no, like, even with Magneto, he's not just trying to be an overruler of the world. He's trying to make sure that his people, the next evolution, are the ones that survive. Like, at least there's some gumption behind it.
I'll say this is why I guess the ones that I like enough, I've dived into their history enough to get the pieces that I understand, where I can. So I'll say, when I would go back, one of my favorite shows growing up was Smallville, right?
Okay.
And Smallville is like Superman origin stories, like before he ever put on his cape, all that
it's
stuff.
him growing up in the town as a teenager and all that.
And throughout that show, like, and again, I don't know how much canon this is to like DC Comics or whatever.
I think
the
it's
case
canon
may be
now, but I think they pretty much made up most of it. I don't think there was any comic that really followed it, as far as I understand. So I think most of the canon that they created is literally modern creation.
And it might be theoretically its own, like, because I remember I've seen them mess around in. They actually went to his universe in an episode of, because they had like Supergirl and like the Flash and all that stuff.
The multiverse,
and they showed up with the character from that from Smallville, and they like did a scene with him. It was cool.
That was the same one that they brought back the CGI Christopher Reeves as the original Superman.
Yeah,
there was a lot of drama about
it. Was wild. It was wild.
But I saw what they did
in that series when he was growing up, when he was like still in high school. Lex Luthor was only like a couple years older. He was out of high school. He was like kind of college age, but like they had become friends. They had developed a relationship. Like, and what the dynamic that happens between them, it makes it tells such a better story than just, oh, I'm a bad dude because I like being a bad dude. Like when you see heart coming, when you see frustration, when you see anger, when you see, how would you feel if that's what you saw? How would you feel if that was, if you were on the receiving end of that? Like, you know, like being able to genuinely put yourself in that place. And I agree that the majority of DC media that's out there to be found doesn't necessarily depict this kind of stuff regularly. But I will say there are elements that I have found that I can very much get behind, that help bring me to a place of appreciation. But it's fair enough that the Marvel media, you don't really have to look very hard to find that. Like it's built into what it is.
You've brought it up too, is like, Smallville did a great job at fleshing all that out, but that wasn't the origins. Like that was a modern telling and a flesh out, right? Like Lex Luthor and Superman didn't know each other. Like that whole Smallville concept, like it's a cool concept, but like Lex Luthor was just some guy who Superman ran into later in life. Like it is nice to see like there was more of a buildup there, but I don't think that was ever like supposed to be like the ideology behind it. But again, it does show that DC is growing, but I don't think that's the fundamentals behind DC. Like that's a newer development. But to me, it's just not what is the guts of DC. DC isn't about making you. DC has never been relatable. Maybe that's just the easiest way to, without making it lofty or without making it convoluted. Maybe my biggest reason why me personally, I've just always gone to Marvel over DC is I want relatable. I don't want phantasmic, right? I don't want a hero that's infallible and that's just great and does all the right things and is just a representation of everything I should be. I want a representation of everything I want to be, right? Superman is everything I should be. He stands up for the small guy. He's never afraid. He's courageous. Like that's, you know, that's the ideology, but that's not what I want. I don't want to follow someone who I know I should be. I want to follow someone who I want to be. I want to see someone struggle and go, I want to be that strong. I want to see someone go through a problem, overcome it and go, I hope I'm that powerful. I want to see someone struggle. Like, okay. Now that I'm an adult, growing up and watching Logan, Wolverine, struggle with his relationship with Jean Grey and Scott. The little growing up, you don't really understand that, you don't understand that growing up. As a 7-year-old, you don't get the love triangle. But growing up, having that as an influence and understanding, like Wolverine was a character to me. And I didn't understand the love triangle, but I understood his actions. I understood his problem with Scott. I understood how he treated Jean Grey, and I understood how he subtly had to deal with his emotions, right? I didn't understand it as an adult, but I understood what he was doing as a character. Now that I'm older, I can look back on that and go, wow, I learned a lot from that. Like, I learned a lot from the fact of you can't have what you always want, and sometimes you have to be okay with that. That's what Wolverine fucking taught me. What did Superman teach me? Oh, someone dies, I can just turn back time. Like literally, one of the movies, one of my favorite things about like the weirdness of, I think it was the second Superman movie where he turned back time. If you actually watch that movie again, and actually watch it in chronological order, in that movie, he saves a town from being flooded, and he saves a train full of people, right? Like he does, it's that movie where he holds the two sides of the train, and the train rolls over him, and he does all this other stuff, right? But Lois Lane dies in like a mudslide or you know, a collapse. So he changes time. He turns back time on the planet just to save her. And you think, oh, happy ending, right? He turned back time. He saved the love of his life. It's a Superman movie. But what they don't show you is that he didn't save that train of people when he turned back time. He didn't save that town from flooding. He didn't do anything he did in the first half. So that first half of the movie, you're seeing him save hundreds of people. And by the end of the movie, he undoes all of it because of emotion. That's what Superman taught me, is put my wife before the planet. But what did Marvel teach me? That sometimes you have to be the bigger fucking person and deal with the shit that you're given, because that's what being a real man, or no offense, but that's what being an adult is. It's being Logan going, I love Jean Grey, but you know what? Scott's not my friend, but he's a buddy. Like, that's my battle buddy. That's someone that I would fight next to. And that's who she chose. I'm going to be the bigger man and be like, look, I love you. I wish I could have you, but I get that your feelings are yours. Like, that's what Wolverine was. He always wanted Jean Grey, but he always recognized that you chose Scott and I'm going to back off. You chose Cyclops. I'm going to back off. That's what that taught me as a man. Like, as an adult, I look back and go, I can now accept that I'm not going to get what I always want. But what did Superman teach me? Fuck everything as long as you get what you have, and that's the happy ending. Like, that's not what they intended, but realistically, think about
depending
what that's
on the stories
people.
that you look at, you can find a lot of negative stories to receive or a lot of positive stories.
Yeah, I'm not saying Superman's all bad, but
because
fundamentally,
there's that what you're describing does not sound like the fundamentals of Superman. That sounds like it is
it's
the
fundamentals of entertainment.
I believe that in the scenario that you posed, I didn't see that. I saw a situation where he was either unaware or was unable to save her the first time around, so he redid things. Now, maybe they didn't show him going back and doing those things, but I have no doubt that with his abilities, he would be able to do. The intent
was that he
would be able to do that too. Like, maybe I didn't. And so
it's all of your, you know, that's anybody can, like, you know, take it however they want. And I'm not saying that's exactly the canon. Like, I'm not saying that he let all the people die, but it is just one of those things where when I watch it, that's what you received out of it. Yeah, that's what I don't want to call it like mental gymnastics, but if you're not telling me what happened, I'm like, again, you turned back time and then only saved her, and that's all you showed me. I'm gonna take that as you didn't do anything. Whereas again, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I appreciate Marvel, who would have gone the extra step and showed me these are the things that he did or did not do. Like, and that's my appreciation.
I get you. I feel like there's definitely a lot to be said for how you can actually find what is real, what these people, whatever the author, whatever the person that's creating these stories is trying to communicate. Like, that's genuinely what I've been trying to do when I watch most of these, because it's really hard when you're watching, like, and this goes for like any movies or any media, all of that kind of stuff. Like, when you do these things, when you look into them, like, understanding what the author is trying to communicate, like, you can take anything out of how many people have been dissecting the Matrix over and over and over again and finding all different types of ways to understand it and to view it and things like that?
That's 100% true. That thing has still been dissected to this day.
At the end of the day, you know, the person who wrote it, they had an intent in mind, right? And again, you can see and you can find a lot of good and or bad in what you're looking at. And I honestly, I think that for me has been something that's challenging, because that's not just something that I feel like is in media, but that's all over the place. Like you can find, you could choose to see a lot of bad in the world around us, or you can choose to see a lot of good in the world around us, and choose to not just ignore and like turn a blind eye to certain things, but use the good that you see to infect more. Yeah. Right, and to spread more, and to what does Michael Jackson say? Look, the change starts with the man in the mirror. Be the change that you want to, like. All that's where my instinct goes when I look at a lot of these things, which is why I love both Marvel and DC. I think they both have beautiful messages and stories to tell, and they tell very different perspectives of very similar stories. And I think that I just think DC's lazier. There's value in that.
Like, I think they both tell really great stories. I really just think DC's lazier, because I not lazier isn't like a bad thing. It's just their stories are much more surface. Like again, they're just much more surface level. They're much more direct. They're much more, this is the good guy, that's the bad guy, and here's the obvious reason. Whereas I feel like Marvel at least gives you that gray area of, we're not sure if these are the good guys, but are they doing the right thing? You know, like Avengers, right? Avengers was very much, you're following the good guys, but not everything they did felt good. I just feel like that's what I appreciate more about Marvel, is it feels more realistic, because DC just feels like you're having to believe too much.
I think what you're talking about is why the first first however many Matrixes failed. You're talking about, they failed because the first couple of Matrixes were utopias. They were too perfect, and the people that were in those simulations rejected that simulation. They were like, this is too perfect. We need conflict. We need discrepancy. We don't want things to be all hunky-dory. Just like you were talking about earlier about the having DMs run their players through a game as heroes. It would be too easy. You would just wipe the floor with everything. Like, nobody would enjoy it. You see these clear cut, you see these mentalities that seem too simple, and it feels, and yes, it feels like it's not enough
and
for
nuance.
You to
there's plenty of nuance in the stories, but while those nuances are there, I don't want to have to extrapolate and search for those nuances. I'm not saying they have to be obvious, right? But sometimes it feels like I have to do more of the world building to justify, like not saying that you're wrong with how you describe Superman and the struggles and how you view it, but I do feel like if I'm just going to sit down and watch it, I have to do more of that. I have to do more, not mental gymnastics, but I have to mentally make that make sense more
feel like
than Marvel.
That's interesting. It's weird because
it's not a bad thing.
That's actually what I look for in a lot of these things. What you're trying to avoid is what I am intentionally going after. In fact, that's another reason why I like a lot of anime, is because I feel like in anime, a lot of the times you are not just told everything. A lot of what you have to do requires some mental gymnastics, requires some insight, requires some digging out of what is presented to you.
Reading between the lines is basically what you're looking for, right?
Kind of, not exactly, but the concept is there, where you're learning to extrapolate from the nonverbal communications. You're learning to understand the amount of communication that happens that isn't overt, that isn't conscious. A lot of the times we telegraph things, we say things that aren't actually conscious and aren't active. A lot of our nonverbal sub cues.
It's things that you have to take not necessarily for granted, but you have to take with your own intent and your own interpretation. You have to look at that and go, again, I don't have to be told Superman's literally doesn't belong here. I have to see that in the way that he interacts with humans. I have to, yes, he's an alien, but I don't have to be constantly reminded of that. I have to just see that he's awkward. He doesn't interact with people. You know, he's not the cool guy. He's not the guy that everybody thinks is awesome and wants to follow, right? He's the weirdo that just is again, you have to extrapolate that all of these things that aren't obvious are part of that character build, and they're trying to be more subtle about it. So I get what you, two different writing styles, but
Sure.
I think for entertainment purposes, if I am being asked to fill in a lot of the blanks,
I do think that's where it comes down to is it's like, it's for entertainment purposes. And like there's a lot of the times where when I'm watching shows and like I'm here to be entertained, right? Not to go necessarily play a game of chess. You know what I'm saying? Like playing a game of chess can be entertaining, but when it's like,
okay, I'll put it this way. I love psychological thrillers. That is my number one favorite genre is psychological thrillers. I don't like horror, but I like psychological.
Sure.
But
Definitely.
when I'm just like at the end of a long week and I'm just like sitting on the couch with my wife and we're just like, let's just put some mind numbing on. I don't want a psychological thriller because I don't want to think. Give me The Matrix. Give me, Mercenaries. Give me, just give me some action movie where I can just sit back and just be like, explosions and pretty lights.
Wonderful.
Yeah. But there are other times where I'm like, I need, give me something
to chew on.
Yeah. Give me something that I don't know more than the main actors. There are sometimes I want to watch that movie and be like, let me figure it out with them. Do not give me any knowledge.
I don't want to see a trailer. I don't want to see nothing.
But then there are other times where I'm just like, just fucking give it to me already. I don't want to think of, just tell me what's going on so I can already be caught up. Like, and that's it, right? There's a time for DC and there's a time for Marvel. More often than not, I'm going to lean Marvel, but I'm not saying that there aren't times where I don't just want the flashiness of DC, where it's like, I know he's good. I know he's bad. Fight it out, popcorn time. You know what I mean? That's okay sometimes. But if I'm really going to judge you overall, over time and over all your efforts, DC feels lazy because they're telling me I need to do all of that extra work. That's good sometimes. But in general, as a practice, it feels like you're asking me to fill in the blanks when that's your job as a storyteller. And again, maybe I'm biased because if I didn't know Marvel, I probably wouldn't have that comparison. But comparing what Marvel does, again, and I'm not saying Marvel is lazy in the sense that it gives me everything. But Marvel, again, whereas DC, it just says, here's the good guy, here's the bad guy, just accept it. Marvel's like, here's the guy that's supposed to be good, and here's the guy that's supposed to be bad. But here's their reasonings. What do you think? And it's not so much I have to mental figure it out. It's like the story is going to continue, but I don't just have to accept things. I can be like, oh, he makes sense, but he also makes sense, and he's right, but he makes sense. Like, I feel like, okay, I understand why they're fighting. Whereas sometimes it's like Lex Luthor just, like, again, Zod. He was in prison and then he came to Earth and now he's just like, I'm going to rule because I escaped prison. So first planet I came across, I'm just going to rule it. Like, I can't get behind that. But if a villain is like Lex Luthor, where it's like, again, like Smallville Lex Luthor, where it's this little by little, it's like, I just can't get where I want to go. And this one thing just happens to always be in my way. And so it's going to slowly turn me into this maniac. I can get behind that, right? That's why Smallville's good. But I need a little bit more of that reality I can get behind instead of the just accept it for face value.
Interesting.
But again,
interesting.
There's a place for both. There's always going to be a place for each storytelling particular style.
Sure.
I'm going to step away for real quick, but I think we have a new or not a new chatter, but we do have a question in chat if you can answer.
Well, that'll depend on how deep we go, but you're talking about the upcoming updates. So we have just been talking a lot about, we kind of got into a tangent about Marvel versus DC and all that other stuff, but it did stem from the foundation of how we are looking at the new updates kind of in general right now. We were talking the other day about the new DMG and what exactly it's going to look like and what kind of information's going to be in there. I don't know how much actual information is out on that right now. So I don't know if there are any like little snippets that we can see, if there's a place to like actually go look up what's in the 2024 DMG. But I'm sure, I swear we were talking about certain pieces, like actually having different mechanics for different things, being able to do kind of have different options for players. One of the big things was weapon types. I don't know if that was DMG or players. Actually, that was probably player's handbook. But yeah, it's definitely something that we are again, we haven't gone through like what all it is. Again,
yeah, I don't have access to the 2024 booklet.
I don't
I'm waiting
even,
for it to come public. I know right now, I think it's still only been sent out to like larger creators and some people to do it. I do want to get into it. I mean, like what we started with in terms of you know, like this whole topic about like, you know, should you keep up? You know, it started from a Reddit topic that I had read about, you know, how important is it to keep up? Like, you know, for people who have been playing D&D for a very long time, like if you're starting out,
has it wild.
Oh, you have the DMG? Oh, interesting. I didn't know if it was publicly available or not. The last I knew they were still only sending out copies to certain people and they were still restricting what could be done. I wasn't sure if it was a finally
the dungeon
available.
Could be one of those special people.
Oh, okay, so it is officially
at the
now.
local store?
Okay, so
Wild.
it's officially out now.
Okay.
So we'll have to actually, you know, I might actually go into that because that would be kind of fun. But yeah, my biggest thing was like from the Reddit post that I read, it was more just talking about for people who've been playing D&D for a couple of years now, right? Not like new players. If you're a new player, you probably should just get involved in the newest one. It's going to be the easiest accessible. It's going to have the most references and everyone's going to be involved in it. But it was like, it spoke to me because it was more of that question of like, for people who've been playing for 10 plus years, how important is it to keep up in today, right? For people who've been playing since the beginning, especially since the game's been out since the 70s, right? Like every 10 years, do you really want to revamp your entire understanding of how you play a game? Or is it more important to just kind of continue as what you know, right? And so that was kind of like the Reddit post is how important is it for the longevity players to keep up versus just enjoy the game as they know it? And that's kind of where we started with this conversation. And I'm in that mindset of like, I don't think it's necessary to keep up with the absolute newest games. Like I'm not interested or worried about getting the brand new 2024 booklet and adopting as many of those rules as I can, right? I don't even play fifth edition in general, but I'm not interested in that because it's always going to be changing. And at that point, I'm not playing the game I invested in. I'm just learning new mechanics to change the gameplay. For me, like what we talked about, how D&D has evolved more into a genre than it has a mechanic set. I look at playing second edition D&D like playing an older version of Mortal Kombat that you really like, or an older version of DBZ, or Street Fighter, or Final Fantasy. But you have a version that you want to keep up, you want to play the new versions, but there's going to be that version that calls to you when you go back to, right? And so for me, it's more about I like to keep up to date so I can incorporate things that I like about each edition. But it's not about, I'm not here to say I need to have the newest mechanics to use them. I'm going to keep up with them enough to be like, I like that mechanic. That works.
Think
in my
about
realm
our
too.
community think about our community creations. All the time, there are different creations that we'll get. They get the inspiration point. They get the, I want to add this to High Point. This is such a cool idea.
You made me develop High Point in a way that I hadn't thought about before.
That is what I believe that you could do. Already something I'm 100% going to steal from 2024 is the weapon mastery. Like I'm not going to implement it the same way, but I am going to use all of those things that they can do. Like if you are proficient in a weapon type, you get to have that. Like that's it. I love what they do because it makes each weapon feel more special.
I really do appreciate, like, I'm definitely going to utilize all of the weapon specialties, like, you know, how each weapon can have a unique feat to itself. I already
mess with them a little
had
bit,
that
but
in High Point, but it's usually like with Doft, it's usually something that it's specific to the character. I kind of like that it's going to be specific to the weapon, and I do want to expand upon it. But right, that's going to be something that I'm going to take from 2024. Just because I play second edition doesn't mean I'm not going to.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what this stuff is for. It's again adding more options to the repertoire for you to choose from. Like,
and
third
I've
edition,
always said it, right? I've always said each edition is an add-on to the previous edition. It's not a replacement. I've never looked at D&D editions as a replacement. It's been an expansion. They are literally, it's like playing WoW, right? Everything's an expansion pack. It's adding on to the previous resources, materials, and choices that you had.
I'm telling
while
you,
still in the same world and the same storyline.
I am going to find a way to incorporate psionics in the Cineverse. Period.
Yeah.
Like that is, I'm going to figure out. I don't think I'm going to 5th edition it. I might even just lightweight keep it as it is and just be like, hey, like, you guys can, like, it but like that's something that I really, really want to do, because I don't care if it's 2nd edition. It's beautiful.
I got a project for us for the ADMG. Either the ADMG or a side project. So maybe don't put this under ADMG. Maybe just put this as a side topic, because we already have the ADMG in progress, right?
Sure.
But that doesn't have to be the only book we publish. We could do the ADMG.
Sure.
What if we did our own supplemental? What if we rewrote the Psionics Handbook for 5th edition? What if we looked at how 2024 is rolling things out, the Player's Handbook and the DMG, and use as much as we can learn from that, and take the entire set? I mean, we've already done an entire series. We did like a 5-episode series where we read the entire Psionics Handbook.
This is very true.
What if we literally were able to convert the Psionics Handbook to 5th edition? Like, take how 5th edition talks and uses materials. What if we were able to justifiably calculate how each power would work?
I would still want to
bring
keep
psionics to 5th edition.
I would still want to keep the layout and
most of it we could. We would just have to change some of the verbiage and how the power works, like how but let's do it. Like,
we could totally do that shit,
because that's the problem. It's one of my favorite things about 2nd edition is they tempted psionics. It was a whole branch of just new ideologies, and no one ever took it up. Like 3rd edition didn't even touch it. What if we made it 5th edition compatible? We could do that.
I'd 100% fuck with that. I'd 100% fuck with that.
Like, I want like kind of lightweight. I would love to be known for the ADMG, but even just something like that, even being able to bring psionics to 5th edition would bring me so much joy. If we could literally make it work to where it's like mostly flawless, like to a point to where people could look at it and go, that sounds like 5th edition. You know what we'd have to do? Oh, that sucks. Oh, that sucks. I know what we would have to do, though. Oh, but it... Nope. I know what we have to do, and it fucking sucks, dude. We have to split it. We'd have to make a psionic class, and then we'd have to split it into subclasses. It wouldn't be able to be as customizable as it is in 2nd.
I think there's a way. I really do.
The problem is the only way to do it in a similar way is to treat it like a more like a wizard, where you have the psionics as spell, like concept of spells, where you can have so many number of psionics, and then like, because of the way that psionics were built, because there's so many categories, you know, the divinations and sciences. I think that's part of the reason why I feel like it has to be.
So I know. Imagine we created a sublist class, right?
Yeah.
And what happens is, and I had been thinking about this for a while, because I played in a game with one of my buddies, and we used something called Advanced 5th Edition, which is somebody else basically homebrewed an expansion to 5th Edition when made a bunch of changes to it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they did with it was when they were doing, when you were leveling up, you got to choose what you took at that level. So like there were like a couple of features you got to choose from,
right?
And you could choose from and so like I feel like if we were to do something similar with the gosh, what is the terminology in psionics?
The sciences and devotion.
Yeah, sciences and devotions.
Like,
if you could do something like that, where it's like, hey, at this level, you have access to.
It's just
this spell list.
The problem is it could work. The problem is like it could work for us because we're used to that, right? Like we look at that and go, yeah, 5th edition's totally fine. But when you look at like someone who's never played any other edition, there's nothing in 5th edition that works like a psionicist. Like in terms of the breadth and creativity, right? Like there's in the way that subclasses and classes work in 5th. That's my hesitation. I want to do it. We were going to do it, but my hesitation is we may find ourselves stuck in a position where what we'll have to do is we'll take like 2 or 3 sciences, and all of those 3 will be available for this one subclass, right? So you could take something like telepathy, like the telepathy psionics, and like meta or metabolic psionics, right? And those 2 would be its own thing. So you have all of those things, but then like clairvoyance and telekinesis would be in their own, like it's almost like you'd have to create a subclass that categorize, because again, that's how 5th edition works, the subclasses. But instead of making every psionic a subclass, it'd be more like categorize a science, like 2 or 3 sciences into a subclass. So that you have all of those, but you wouldn't be able to have every psionic available to you, but you would have a set of psionics available to you. I think that's how 5th edition would do it.
I can see it if
telekinesis.
If it's almost like when you choose a certain initial subclass, you can like add subsequent subclasses to it. Like if that's what you're trying to say.
I'm just saying, like, you know how like telekinesis is all about moving things with your mind.
Sure.
And then clairvoyance is being able to see with your mind.
Sure.
Those 2 would be a subclass. Like you would have a psionic subclass of all of the clairvoyant and telekinesis powers. That's one subclass. But then another subclass might be all of the like metabolic psionicists, right? All of the internal, I can change my body around. And maybe that also, I forget all of the names off the top of my head, but that's how I think it would be, where we would create.
But then what if I wanted to be telekinetic and metabolic instead of telekinetic and
and that's where I think 5th edition, that's where we have to make some hard decisions. That's where we're going to do this off stream, but that's the hard decisions, right? Because in 5th edition, there's nothing in 5th edition like psionics in terms of the absolute customization, right? Psionics in 2nd edition are one of the most customizable classes in all of D&D, period. And 5th edition doesn't work that way. I'm not saying that we couldn't work it that way, but think about how it would look in a 5th edition book. It would be more complicated than any other class. And so we could do both. I want us to do both.
Okay.
But I think the official 5th edition approach, the official way Wizards would do it, is go telekinesis
I agree.
And clairvoyance.
I agree.
Is a subclass. Like all of it is just shoved. But I think what we want is the 2nd edition of you choose a subclass and it's literally every step of the way is customizable. That's not very 2nd edition.
I have an idea. If the way I'm thinking about this, because I will say a lot of 5th edition is what I would consider modular. If I can make these things modular enough, we could create the solidified subclasses, but theoretically people could move them around if they wanted to themselves. Like we can create like, hey, this is what you get with these 2, but there shouldn't be anything stopping you from saying, hey, I'm going to take what I get from this piece and I'm going to put it in this and replace it with that one.
So I think I think what we really have to do, I think what's really going to change it, I think we can still kind of do the thing where at 5th level you get to choose another science, you know, at 10th level you choose another devotion. I think we can do that. I think the problem with it is what we have to do is we have to separate. We have to create a psionicist main class and then the subclasses. Like, I think we have to separate, not necessarily multiple subclasses, but we have to identify what are the things that every psionicist is going to get, period. And then we have to make a subclass that is the customizable version. So it's like at, you know, 1st, 3rd, 5th, 10th, 15th, and 20th level, every psionicist gets these things. But just like a subclass, right? That's what changes the in-between stages. Instead of doing multiple subclasses, that subclass is just saying that every subsequent level, you know, 4th, 6th, 9th, 12th, you get to choose a devotion or a science, right? So instead of saying that you have to lock in from day one the types of powers you're going to get, it's more like, as a psionicist, here's the things that you're going to get. But once you've subclassed, here's the things that you get to customize, right?
What if it was like Eldritch Invocations, but you just got a different list of Eldritch Invocations for each?
That would be very difficult, because then we have to go through every psionic and then list them all out in their own groups. Like, we'd have to make tables.
Asked and answered. I would love to do that.
I don't want to recreate it though. I would want it to be the same reference point, like in terms of either you go out and look at all of them and choose them, or we just group them together. Like, here's the 2 that you get. I think us being like, because there's so many powers, I don't want to have to.
Are some powers reliant on combinations?
Yes. And that's where I don't want to get too deep in the weeds of the individual powers. I'd much rather, if we're going to organize, we'll organize top level. But I think we can do it. I think we can do a subclass that's specific, and I think we can do an open subclass.
Okay.
I think we can do both.
Okay.
Kind of like how you were. Oh, by the way, do you have an update on everybody, since we're all here? Do you have an update on the Shazam write-ups?
Yes. So our Shazam write-ups are good to go. I think the only thing that you and I were left talking about was where we're going to post them.
Yes.
If we're going to create like a channel or something.
Channel for this. So if you want, I will create a channel for this hopefully over the weekend. But if you want, you can post it in the community chat, unless you want to wait for me. Or you just post in community, just write the community chat.
Okay.
But yeah, so we wanted to post, because we did a couple weeks back, we did the pop culture build for Shazam.
Yes.
And Kage has finally written up everything. So he's written up an absolutely amazing. Actually, can I pull that up right now?
I was gonna say, if you want to give them the.
Where is that? An admin chat? Where did you post? Oh yeah.
Was it? Yeah. Those 2 links right there.
All right. So I think, are you still working on the D&D specific and the icon specific write-ups, like the actual character sheets? Are you still writing both of those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So right now we just have the actual roadmap. So I'm going to show this off because I absolutely loved this. This was something that I was really interested to see.
I wish I had a little bit more customization on this. Otherwise, I would have like merged each one of those things, so it was like a big S, but then it would have like made the ones that only have one line weird. So yeah, it was fine.
Yeah,
we made it work.
So let me show you all this. So this is the roadmap that that Kage has built based off of my notes that we did on the stream. So I'm so happy with this. We're going to run through this real quick for y'all. This is the Shazam roadmap. So Kage is still going to provide 2 different character sheets. So one is going to be a character sheet that is D&D specific, right? It's going to be D&D focused. So it is going to be everything that we wrote up for the Shazam build, but it's going to include everything that D&D would have included based on what we said, right? So like, for instance, we chose Dampier as the race with a Dragonborn lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dampier comes with Vampiric Bite, right? That's a D&D specific aspect that you get from Dampier, but that has nothing to do with Shazam.
Correct.
So what we're going to do is, this is the roadmap in order to teach someone how to build a Shazam character from the ground up and all the things that you'll need and why. The other 2 things that haven't been posted yet that he will post are actual full-fledged level 20 character sheets, fully filled out, but one will be D&D specific. So it'll have things like Vampiric Bite. It'll have all the things that are not Shazam specific,
but get anyways.
Come with the build that we did. So that's going to be the D&D specific character sheet. Then there's going to be what we call the icon specific character sheet.
And that's the one I have mostly created already.
And this one is going to be the character sheet as accurate to the character, not to D&D lore. So it'll be Shazam with Dampier as the race, but that character sheet won't list Vampiric Bite, because Vampiric Bite has nothing to do with Shazam. It's a byproduct of how we built Shazam, if that makes sense for you guys. So anything that is a byproduct of how we built the Shazam character, but has nothing to do with it, will be in the D&D focused build. And then the icon focused build will ignore anything, regardless of if it is accurate to D&D, it'll ignore it, only to give you exactly what Shazam would do. And that's just to kind of give you an idea of, do you want just the Shazam character fully homebrewed, or do you want the D&D equivalent.
Right.
And that's why we're doing both of those character sheets, so you guys can see what both builds look like, accurate to both sides.
Honestly, I kind of look at it like the icon build is almost like what a DM would kind of end up using
Like an NPC.
as an NPC, but the D&D accurate build is what you would end up with is if as a player you built this from the ground up.
Right. And not playing Shazam as Shazam, but playing the most equivalent build.
Correct.
So yeah, so those two aren't out yet, but we will be as soon as Kage is done building those up, we'll post those as well, and we'll have a
Put those in the same place.
But this that I want to go through is something that he created and is absolutely brilliant. I think that I'm just absolutely thrilled with how each aspect of this was developed. But this is the roadmap. So this is if somebody wants to say they really liked our pop culture build of Shazam, and they're like, hey, I want to build a character off that, but I'm starting at level 1, right? This is basically to show you, starting from level 1, what are the things bare minimum you need to choose and why. Not necessarily the order you're going to choose them in, but just why we selected these things for this build. And this is so beautiful. So we start off with the Shazam roadmap. It is a pop culture build of Shazam, and this was requested by Soul Collective Guild. They were the ones that gave us this. So the build summary. This is one of my, hands down, this right here, my favorite piece of this entire roadmap is this power table. This probably won't happen for most of the builds we do, but it's fucking phenomenal for Shazam. I love the idea of the acronyms on the side. It's just absolutely gorgeous that we were able to do that. But then breaking down the definition of what the acronym is, the ability that it comes with, and the 5e equivalent feature, I think is brilliant, right? So we have S of Shazam for the wisdom of Solomon, S for Solomon. Now, the abilities that we chose were perfect recall, hyper awareness, and omnilingual, right? These are the things that we learned were about Shazam. And so we were like, well, what does he get from Solomon? These are the kind of things that we pulled out. So how do we equate to those? Well, we get the keen mind feat for perfect recall. We get the evasion from Monk and danger sense from Barbarian for their hyper awareness. And we get tongue of the sun and moon Monk for omnilingual, right? So we're just telling you guys, based off of this build, these are how you're going to get these things. How are you going to get the strength of Hercules and his super strength? Well, you're going to get a strength of 20 as long as you properly use your ASIs and have your proper base, right? How are you going to get the stamina of Atlas? That's going to come with self-sustenance and self-endurance. Deathless nature from the Dampier, and then the Diamond Soul from Monk. These are going to be attributes and features that you get that will represent as best we can from like the stamina. Power of Zeus, you're going to get magical resistance, both from the boon of magic resistance totem spirit, from the Barbarian. You're also going to get physical enhancement from the Monk with purity of body. You're going to get spell casting as the cleric sorcerer class. You're going to get a lightning power, which is coming from the breath weapon, which again is big for Shazam. That's his main magical attack is lightning. And then advanced healing. Shazam is known to be able to use his lightning to heal himself. So we gave Way of the Mercy, which is going to give us that healing ability in combat and out of combat. A for Achilles, the Courage of Achilles. We're giving physical resistance, which is coming from the Rage and Unarmored Defense from Barbarian. We obviously get a good alignment or a neutral good alignment from Achilles, so that's just obvious that we're going to just static that. And then Fear Resistance. Well, Stillness of Mind from the Monk build. We'll give him the Fearless Resistance, which again is very much about Shazam because Shazam just doesn't back down. And then Speed of Mercury. We have Super Speed and Flight. How do we get that? Well, we have Unarmored Movement from the Monk. We have Draconic Flight from the Dragonborn, and Tempestuous Magic from the Sorcerer Origin. I forget how that one equated.
So whenever you were, I believe it was whenever you cast a lightning spell, you have the ability to like fly 10 feet.
Oh, right. So in combat. So not
like
only
in
do you
combat.
have the flight from Draconic Flight out of combat, but in combat, Tempest Magic allowed you to basically fly as a movement.
Yes.
In
reaction to doing certain things in combat.
So this is like, again, the roadmap of here's how we're representing each aspect of Shazam. Here's what they represent. And then here's the ability in the 5e feat that represents how we're going to get there. The stat summary is pretty obvious between all of them. Here's what we believe that you would have to, if you were going to point by or roll for it, here is the base stats that you would have to achieve in order to get the what we believe is the
roughly
appropriate.
Yes.
So if you can get 2 18s and put them in strength and dex, your next available biggest one go into constitution. We decided that a 15 would be best. And then if you can get 11 or a 13 in wisdom, an 11 in intelligence, and a 10 in charisma, or again at least this opportunity. You're 2 highest in strength and dex. You're next in constitution, next in wisdom, next in intelligence, next in charisma. That's how you want to go through that flow. Because with the race that we've chosen, you're going to get a +1 in constitution and you're going to get a +2 in wisdom. So right there, separating those out, they're going to get the best of the benefits from those boosts. Your ASIs that you're going to take throughout level 20, you're going to eventually take ASIs to get a +2 to strength and a +2 to constitution to bump those to 20, or to bump the strength to 20 to get the super strength, constitution to get some extra life. And then we are going to take a feat, a specific feat that gives us a +1 to intelligence. So that's also going to just bump up the bonuses that we know.
And that constitution also helps out our armor class as well, which is another really big point that we wanted to make sure we got to in the end.
So here's the total that you should end up with after level 20 with the ASIs, your race bonuses, and your base. You should be ending up with a 20, an 18, an 18, a 15, a 12, and a 10, which is a pretty good spread for a level 20 character.
Most definitely.
Sound
most definitely
outside of the realm of achievable, right? If there were 2 20s on there, that might sound a little bit much, but you know, a 20 and 2 18s at level 20 sounds achievable.
Very much so.
So I feel like that's a good base that we do.
And again, the other thing that we were talking about was we're not trying to just pile on a bunch of items onto these people to like help them get to these things. We wanted to
magic your
found these things. Exactly.
We wanted to make what is the most basic fundamental rule sets that I had to follow in order to get there.
And again, if like a player's actually going through to build this and they choose to use items or whatever to help them get to whatever it is that they do, what you got to do. But like, this is just the most.
But Shazam doesn't use any items. This is like, if you just woke up without your armor, are you still Shazam?
Yes.
And then we can go through a couple of things. So like, yeah, we chose the racial features. So we chose the Dampier race, because they have the 35 movement, so automatically faster. You get climb speed equal to your walking speed, which kind of equates to the flight mechanic. It's more of just the maneuverability mechanic.
And they're just faster because you have a 35 instead of a 30 like everybody else.
Yeah, you don't need to breathe, which is a big thing for Shazam. Like you just basically do. The spider climb, and then at 3rd level, and then you can walk without your hands at 3rd level. So
walking on like
literally like flying along the wall.
Exactly.
The Dragonborn lineage that we're taking is mainly because we're going to be able to get resistance to lightning as well as a lightning breath weapon. That's a big deal for Shazam. And then of course you get a couple extra stuff, you know, your range, your DC saves, and all of that stuff. Your class features. Now, Monk is the biggest one. We're doing 14 levels in Monk, I believe.
14 levels in Monk, yes.
And here's the reason why. Again, this is just this isn't telling you what order to take these things in, because for me, the reason why I didn't want to do that in terms of the roadmap is I wanted people to be able to build this character with the ideology that they wanted to become Shazam or represent Shazam. But your campaign will dictate how you should level up. Maybe you do all of Monk first. Maybe you do Tempest Cleric first. Maybe you do Sorcerer first. I don't want to tell you how you need to go about this because that doesn't make sense. Shazam got all of his powers at once. He didn't get them one at a time. Yeah. So how you go about doing this doesn't matter. These are just the components you need, right?
Yes.
So with Monk, we chose 14 levels in Monk. And again, this isn't talking about everything you get from Monk. It's only showing you why we chose it for what we did. So at level 1, you know, you get your martial arts die to do your damage, you know, for your unarmed strike. And you can use your attack damage with unarmed strike, and you can make 1 unarmed strike as a bonus action. Right?
Making you being able to punch a lot more, making your unarmed strikes actually feel like dangerous, right? Because when he punches somebody, it's like Superman punching somebody. Exactly. It's gotta feel dangerous.
This is you want to be a monk because it's not about weapons; it's about pure raw strength, right? Yep. You get your Kai Blast, you get your Fury of Blows, your Patience Defense, Step of the Wind. Like all of these things are very much involved in combat-oriented maneuverability and in and out
speed, your resistance, your reaction time, all of these things. Yeah, very much so.
We get an increase of 10 of your speed by 10. So again, this is going for the speed aspect of Shazam. Deflect missiles is really good. This is more about like just the overall defensiveness and reactability of Shazam, because we've seen that in multiple accounts. Slow fall is great from the monk side, because again, it's like if Shazam can fly, he shouldn't take fall damage. So we have to do that. Quickened healing is also a good thing because Shazam's known to be able to heal himself in mid combat. Extra attack, just because
more attacks, more hits.
Stunning strike, again, being so powerful, like being able to stun your opponent. Again, empowering your strikes is magical. It's absolutely Shazam can just power that electricity right through his punch. Again, evasion, more maneuverability, more about the speed.
Very much so.
Stillness of mind. So again, we know that he's not able to be charmed or easily dissuaded. So this is kind of that whole mental fortitude
that immune to fear.
Yeah. He's comically and almost innocently brave and courageous, right?
Right.
He just doesn't know to be afraid. So that's kind of this whole idea of, being basically, you can use your action to just stop being frightened. So if something frightens you, you're Shazam. You're like, no, I'm here. You're my enemy. Like, that's Shazam. Shazam is just overly heroic. So I do like that aspect. Purity of body, immune to disease and poison, just kind of goes along with the fortitude. Tongue of the sun and moon, because of Solomon, and omnilingual, because that's what Shazam's known about, is can speak any language. This makes perfect sense. It was the perfect, I think it was the subclass, right? It was a subclass of monk.
That's actually a base class.
Oh, that's the base class.
That's base class.
For some reason I thought that was the sun and moon was their subclass.
No, it's the, what did we call it? The way the mercy is a subclass.
That's right. We did mercy.
Yeah.
And then Diamond Soul, so proficiency in all saving throws makes it more hardy. And then whenever you make a fail, you can spend a Kai point to re-roll it. So again, just making him lucky, making him more durable in combat, makes it feel
making him be able to survive a lot more.
It's a hero aspect. Oh, and here we go. Way of Mercy, right? So you have the healing, the Hand of Healing, Physician's Touch, and Fury of Healing. So all of that part of the subclass is because Shazam was... story-wise, Shazam was able to use the Call Lightning. Like, he was able to call the living lightning to heal him and rejuvenate.
It gives him a lot of regenerative abilities.
There's no heal by lightning in D&D, so we gave him a Way of Mercy in order to pack him full of self-healing.
Yes.
All of these things can be used to self-heal.
So he doesn't need a cleric on his team to be able to go into combat and come out okay.
Right, because he's supposed to be able to take care of himself. So
Very
that's
much so.
where, again, we're not just giving him powers to say he can heal with lightning. We're trying to find the best way to build out what represents his ability to heal himself. With the Barbarian, obviously with Rage, because the ability to just go into battle and just
I don't need armor.
Enemy.
I'm tough.
Plus also all of the advantages you get on strength savings, the resistances. I think that was one of the main reasons why we chose it, because obviously Shazam's really powerful when he's in transformation. So being able to rage and be resistant to most damage, and that was really, really powerful.
Yeah, a lot of those magical resistances.
And then unarmored defense, obviously boosting his ability to take a hit. Danger sense, again, just his idea of being able to, it's the wisdom of Solomon, being able to understand the battlefield and be able to react to it. Reckless attack is also kind of that thing. He's over presumptuous. He's headstrong. He runs into battle without thinking a lot of the times. So reckless attack is very much hard hitting, but sometimes he's dumb enough to put himself in vulnerable situations. Path of the Totem Warrior, which was the subclass that we get, and then
we did that one specifically so we could get resistance to everything,
to physical damage. So yeah, so at that point when you rage, physical damage means nothing to you. It has to be basically magical at that point, which
not even that. This is all damage except for psychic, even magical damage.
Oh yeah,
lightning damage. You're resistant. You're resistant, and that's to super necrotic damage.
For Shazam, because he's overall resistant to anything. So that's really great for that. We did the Storm Cleric.
Yes. It's the Tempest domain.
Tempest Cleric, mainly for the spell casting, as well as we did Cleric for another reason.
So they have an ability. Their Storm Cleric has the ability to use their Channel Divinity to basically do max damage whenever you're casting a lightning spell.
That's right. So all lightning spells, including the breath weapon, will automatically do max damage. And the Tempest Cleric is also the reason why you can fly when doing the spell.
That's actually the Sorcerer.
Oh, that's the Sorcerer.
But this first feature also says that you can use a reaction to give somebody a dexterity saving throw or do damage to you when they come up to hit you.
You can use reaction to cause a creature to make a dexterity saving throw. The creature takes 2d8 lightning damage on a fail. That's right. Yeah. So it's all that whole thing of, if someone's going to attack me, I can literally use my living lightning to counterattack.
Yes.
So that's why we chose that one. The Storm Sorcerer, the Tempest magic, was because you were able to fly up to 10 feet if you use a spell of first level or higher. You can use your bonus action to fly.
Yeah.
So again, the idea that you don't have to be flying in order to use your flight elevates this character's usage.
Yeah.
And then additional features, Keen Mind, you always know which way is north. You always have, number of hours, accurate recall. And then those are fine, but this is why we had it.
Yeah.
accurately recall anything you have seen or heard within the past month. That is supposed to be a big deal for Shazam.
He's got such a perfect recall. Yeah.
And this is in the past month, but again, it's the D&D equivalent of
Correct.
being able to recall. And then epic boons of magic resistance. This was because of
magic resistance.
Epic boon, but where do you get epic boons from? Is
So
that
that's a new thing that you get in 2024. I probably should have added that to the end of that. Said this is 2024 feature, but like at level 19, almost every class gets an epic boon.
And this one we chose as the epic boon of magic resistance. You have advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects, which again is even, we already have magic against everything other than psychic, and this is just now magical effects.
This is just more general magic. Yes.
Yeah, so we're just again adding that roadmap of, at the end of the day, if you were to finally make it to level 20 and follow all of this roadmap, you would basically have the D&D equivalent of Shazam, right?
Yeah.
You're not playing Shazam, but you are the in-game equivalent using everything that we were able to find. And I love that. I'm absolutely so thrilled with that, y'all. If you guys can check this out, I would suggest, just post it in the community, and then we'll post it when we get an official a channel set up this weekend. But take a look at it if you guys haven't. It's absolutely brilliant. It reads, I don't know if you guys were able to see it on stream, but it reads so cleanly. It makes so much sense in order to be like, if I wanted to be this, like, I'm so excited. I looked at the template for the character sheet, and while that looks really good for anybody who wants like just to take it and run with it, it just doesn't really represent as much as this does. Like this, whether or not you wanted to start at level 1, 10, or 20, this right here is everything you need. You know, you can go look in the book and figure out what Dampier will give you otherwise.
Right.
But this is so beautiful. Like I can't say how much you did, like how well you.
I appreciate it. I'm glad this turned out so well,
because this is exactly what I wanted. This is when I thought about putting a roadmap together. I didn't even realize that this is like I knew I wanted something similar to this, but you figured out a way to like this part. I didn't even know how I wanted this to represent, but this is so beautiful.
Good.
So go check it out. Wait, and then once we get the character sheets, we'll make a new one. We do have a hydrate. Cool. So always a good thing. Thank you so much.
Much appreciated.
But yeah, this was so much fun to do, not only on stream, but to like see this now. I'm super excited to be able to put more of these together, because as we build pop culture builds, to have these roadmaps to just hand out and be like,
and I love that I have a template for this now. So it's like I have an idea of like how I want to start presenting things. So I think it'll be good.
Yeah,
good moving forward, especially.
I'm super excited about it as well. So yeah, so that's coming down the road. So speaking of which, what time is it? Okay, so we actually went a little bit further than I was expecting. I was expecting tonight to be a little bit a little bit short, but we're not.
We made it work.
Actually. So one of the last things I wanted to bring up from everybody is how we're gonna run tomorrow, because tomorrow's gonna be a really crazy day, because we have our we have a stream that we're gonna probably start around 11 a.m. And then we're gonna go probably until about 3 or so, and then we have other stuff that we have to do that afternoon. So we're gonna go as late as we can. But tomorrow we have subletting subclasses.
Yes.
So
yes.
How are we gonna do that? So we already know that the first subclass that we're gonna sublet is the Echo Knight. It was the one that started this whole thing. It was the one that spawned my idea. So we're gonna start with the Echo Knight. Now, with that, we weren't really sure. We've kind of spitballed before stream, and we weren't really sure. Like, we don't have time to both go home tonight, create one, and then present it tomorrow on stream. And I was kind of thinking it would be kind of nice to be able to do more than one at a time. You know, me do a class, you do a class, and then we can actually expand this more. But we're not gonna have time for that. And it's the first time, so I think doing the same class together and with chat would be a little bit easier than presenting. So the question is, I know what class I would want to do.
Okay.
So do we just go with the class that we think is the best and the easiest for us to do stream one? Or do we let chat decide at the beginning of stream? Do we just put a poll out with every class and let chat decide which class we sublet? Because so my choice, I want to do the rogue first. Like, okay. I want to take the Echo Knight and I want to make an Echo Assassin. I want to make a subclass Echo Assassin.
Okay.
Technically it's an Echo Rogue, but
sure.
You know, it's fighter Echo Knight. I want to make the rogue Echo Assassin. I want to make the subclass Echo Assassin. That's if we were going to do one each, that's the one I was going to take. I'm a rogue main. Let's face it. Like, of course, I'm always going to take fucking rogue.
Sure.
But I don't know if like that's my bias. But should we just, when we start tomorrow, like the first thing we do when we're introing and talking about what we're going to do, and just like as we're kind of like, you know, just talking about like our process, should we just start the stream with a poll that says which subclass are we doing today, and do we just wing it? Or do we just decide now and kind of both sleep on it so we can kind of be prepped?
I mean, I think that having, at the very least, not necessarily like you said, going through and researching like an entire build and presenting it, but at the very least being able to chew on what ideas we'd like to bring to the table is probably valuable.
I agree, because it's nice to tangent live and be dynamic with some optional or opinionated topics. This might be something that will be better off if we thought about beforehand, because I've been thinking about the assassin for a while. But if they throw us like barbarian tomorrow, I have not thought about what an echo barbarian is going to do.
Right.
So if they throw that to us, I feel like that would be more of a challenge, and it would definitely be up our alley.
Sure.
But I do agree that if it's going to be the very first episode, we should probably put our best foot forward. Try to, like, again, with pop culture builds, we were pretty prepared for that. We knew the process. We knew the phases. Yes. I kind of agree. Maybe we should just decide. So how do you feel about doing an Echo Assassin? You feeling that pretty good? I can
100% get behind that. Like, I will need to chew for a little bit. Like I said, think about what directions I would go, or what kind of suggestions I want to bring to the table.
Because I feel like what we're going to do is when we start stream tomorrow, we'll look up the Echo Knight and just very quickly just go over
what it is, what it looks like.
Just very quick summary. And then what we'll do during that summary is we'll, like on the whiteboard or something, we'll pick and choose the things that stand out the most. Not powers, not the fact that, you know, you can make an echo and then teleport to it, make an attack from it, and then go back to your normal spot. That's a specific power for the Echo Knight. But what I want to take out of that is the echo itself. You can produce an echo. Now, what you do with the echo, I believe, should be different per class. If the fighter can attack through their echo, maybe the assassin can only teleport, like can't do an attack, but can like dodge with their echo. Like if they're targeted, they can go to their echo simply to not be the target.
I kind of look at it like that Sub-Zero move where he creates his little ice clone. I freaking love that thing.
Oh, imagine the assassin, whenever you hide in shadows, you leave an echo behind where you last were. Mm-hmm. So you can move about freely, and that's as long as your echo is
imagine
up.
That's why you don't provoke an opportunity attack, because they don't think you left.
What if we say as long as your echo is up, because you know the echo can go down. What if we say that as long as the echo is up, they have disadvantage on perception checks? Because normally it's passive perception for you to hide. Mm-hmm. So if you hide in shadows and you doing so makes an echo appear, as long as the echo is on the battlefield, they have disadvantage on finding you. So essentially, they're always paying attention to the echo.
Right.
Your echo can't do anything, but until you backstab, your echo's keeping them distracted. So that way you always get the advantage. As long as your echo's alive.
I would love it. Like, I know that
we're doing too much. This is what we're supposed to do tomorrow.
Exactly. Anyways.
No, but this is what I'm talking about, right? Like, this is what I want to do. I don't want to say, well, the Echo Knight can do this, so let's make the other Echo do it. I just want to go, what is the fundamental of an Echo Knight? What are the fundamental upgrades, right? We know that they have an echo and they can do something through it. And then what is the next thing? You know, what's the next, like level 10? What do they get at level 10 as an Echo Knight? And what's the equivalent to a rogue? Like specifically for an assassin. So that's what I'm really excited about, is trying to extrapolate, because my ultimate goal with this, if I haven't made it clear, my ultimate goal with doing subletting subclasses is to figure out a way to take a subclass and spread it across enough of them to where you can make a whole party that's cohesive. Like, I want an Echo party. You know, I want to DM a party who one's an Echo Knight, one's an Echo Assassin, you know, one's an Echo Sorcerer, you know, one's an Echo Cleric. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to run a whole party where this makes sense, where they're all from the same culture or the same background or the same guild, right? They all learn the abilities, but they all apply the abilities differently. That's my goal. It's not just to create a new subclass that sounds similar to another one.
Right.
Because that's, that's cool. That's fine to create a subclass that just, sounds cool. But what I really want to do is create a synergistic idea behind a party. Because when you tell, again, the whole reason why this came up is when I hear Echo Knight, I'm like, you're telling me that because again, I look at classes as not singular. If you're a class, that means that these exist.
Very repeatable.
And that means that people get, when you're a fighter, you get drawn to it, right? When you're a pirate, you get drawn to that lifestyle. So if a pirate and a rapier fighter and a sailor and a dueler are all technically the same, they're just slightly different approaches, right? Why is there only one Echo Knight? Like if there's a pirate and a sailor and a rapier fighter who's never touched a boat, but they all act and operate the same way, they all had obviously different approaches to the same lifestyle. So why can't an Echo Knight? Why are you telling me that everyone in existence who has ever learned this ability has only ever learned it that one way? That's what I have a problem with. When I hear a subclass like Echo Knight, it's not just saying that you have some specialties that make sense that you're a fighter, so you have those specialties. You learned something about the world. You learned how to project an echo of yourself, but you're telling me that everyone in existence who learned how to project an echo of themselves can only do so in the style of a fighter who will attack through it.
Right.
You're telling me that no mage or no person that's ever learned this echo was also a magic user? No one that ever learned how to use this echo was a druid? No one that ever learned this echo was a ranger? You're telling me that the only people who were ever taught this or learned it were fighters? That's my problem, right? In terms of lore, some subclasses make perfect sense that they are isolated to their class. But there are some classes where it's like, why were you the only person to ever learn this? And why is it that only people who learn this do exactly what you do? Because again, it's one thing if it's a spell. Like fireball is fireball is fireball. Every wizard that casts fireball is expected to cast fireball the same exact way. But why is it that your lifestyle, the thing, the class feature you were able to do, why is that so identical? That's what I want to break. I want to break this mindset that if you're one class, it means that you can't apply that specialty to a different class. And whether or not we just continue to do this and make a shit ton of different classes, or we make a template for people, I would, even if that's what comes out of this, the subletting of subclasses is a way to templatize how to take a class and make it into another class. What if you what if someone likes Ice Monarch, but wants a rogue with the similar abilities, or the Shadow Monarch with the liquid-like body armor, right? That forms over them and then can turn into their weapon. But where's that for the barbarian? Like these ideas of what if we were able to take a template where it's like, if you have a certain class, we can kind of templatize it to where you can easily transition it for a different class, but have the same unique abilities.
Right.
So that's my ultimate goal. My absolute ultimate goal is to get to that point where we can be able to essentially have an entire party from the same background or same lifestyle, but all represented differently. Because I think that would be so cool to have these kids who were born and they're now refugees, right? Like that's their storyline. They're refugees in a new place, but they're all from this country that's, now war torn. So they're all Echo Knights. They're all Echo versions, right? They all learned this specialty from their home country that nobody knows, that no one else knows how to use, but they all use it differently.
Yeah.
That sounds so much fun to me. It sounds like a very unique gameplay too, to be able to craft a gameplay, not specifically for a bunch of different classes, but also be able to develop a campaign that specifically will highlight all of their unique usages of the same ability.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to have a cleric and a paladin and a fighter and a rogue and a druid, and then challenge them with things that are class specific. But how often do you get to challenge them all with the same problem that they all can approach with the same tool, but use that tool differently?
Right.
That's the thing that I feel like people don't really get in terms of those puzzles. It's almost like if I give you a puzzle and it has nothing to do with your character or your build, you're going to be like, okay, I'll wait for the party to do it. But if everybody has input, right? If you made a tool that everybody's ability essentially worked for, I think you'd get a lot more dynamic party interplay, instead of people just being like, well, who's going to solve it because who has that ability? But when everybody has the ability, Then it's more about, well, who can apply it correctly?
Interesting.
Does that make more sense?
I think I get where you're coming from.
Like if you had a monk and a paladin, and you had a puzzle that was very athletics based, like you had to jump and swing and climb. Paladin's probably going to wait for the monk to do it all, right? Like the paladin's probably not going to be the first one to go jump and swing across a rope and climb a ledge and then scurry up a mountain and then shimmy over to unleash, a drawbridge. It's going to be the monk. The monk's going to be the one to do all of that stuff. But imagine a problem where it's like, oh, you all can do something similar, but not quite the same way. Which one of your abilities will actually do it? That's different than, well, you obviously can't do anything, so sit back. It's not a great analogy, but that's my thing. Is sometimes puzzles feel too one-sided, and they feel too directed at a certain character. I'd love to have more puzzles that the entire party can decide how they're going to go about it. So I think that's my overall goal. So much passion on this stream. Well, we try, Saint Vice, we do try as much as we can to have a lot of passion on this stream. We are very 100%. Passionate about D&D and the things that we talk about. So welcome. Thank you so much for chatting and joining us today. We've gone through quite a bit today. We've actually gone through more topics than I think that we were interested. Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much for the follow. We do appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank
and I hope you continue to enjoy it. Big Dungeon, you are headed to bed. Well, we are probably going to be ending here soon anyway. Thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate it. We'll be back on Monday as always, but of course we will be here tomorrow starting at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Indeed.
I know that'll be late into your afternoon, but Big Dungeon, I hope you can join us. And if you do, definitely chat with us in chat. But have a great night. Anyway, Saint Vice, I am so sorry if you just joined us. We are probably going to be cutting it here. We've already been 2.5 hours in. We do have an early-ish. We're used to going at 7 p.m. So 11 a.m. is going to be a little bit early. But if you are interested, we do have what we call our community stream tomorrow. So this is a stream that we, every month, at the beginning of every month, we do a community challenge where y'all can basically pay the channel points, and you can earn a community stream. It's a free extra stream that we host every month. That's a topic that everyone decides upon. So tomorrow's going to be that stream. We are going to be doing a topic called subletting subclasses, where we take a type of subclass and apply the abilities to a different class. So for instance, what we're going to do tomorrow that you probably heard us talking about, we're going to take the Echo Knight. So the fighter subclass Echo Knight, and we're going to basically build the Echo Assassin. We're going to take the Assassin subclass and apply the Echo Knight abilities to it and see if we can create a brand new subclass that coincides with the same type of background or upbringing, right? I kind of think of it as like a Ken and Ryu situation. They both have the same master, but completely different approaches to fighting style. They're basically two different subclasses of fighter, right? Ryu and Ken, different subclasses.
Sure.
That's kind of what I want, right? They both have similar abilities, but they apply them differently.
I like it.
So that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. I hope if you are here, Saint Vice, definitely join us tomorrow. We'll be here at 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time till about 3:30, and that's about as far as we can go. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to build out the entirety of the Echo Assassin. That'll be the goal for tomorrow.
Yeah, most definitely.
But otherwise, since you're new, if you are interested outside of tomorrow, we stream every Monday and Friday. So Mondays we do...
you want to talk about Mondays? I know you and I talked briefly about...
the time frame. Yes. So Mondays we normally do homebrew review. So we have community submissions where people, if you want, actually I'll drop the link in chat right now. So if you want, you can join our Discord. Link is in chat. And there you can just give us topics to discuss. You can just chat with the rest of the community, or you can provide your own homebrew creation. So your own homebrew stuff. We have a community creations channel where you can submit those. And every Monday we go through those, we review it. We talk about balancing. We talk about how we would approach it as a DM, how we might approach it as a player. And at the end of it, after we've talked about all of that, I will usually give it a compatibility score, 1 out of 10, what we call high points. And it's basically a compatibility of how as written would it work, how well would it work in my personal setting. So it's not so much a ranking of how much we like it or how good it is, but it's a compatibility. Like how much would I be able to easily take that and put it right into my setting without any changes. So that's kind of something that we do on Mondays. Everyone seems to really enjoy it. So you can submit there for that. Otherwise on Fridays, we do stuff like this. We just do deep dives, talk with chat, do tangents.
Histories.
History of is a big thing that we do. We'll usually do a super deep dive, like we've done history of leveling, history of spell casting, history of prestige classes. We've done history and alignment. So basically in the history of, we go through every single edition and we break down how each edition approached and defined and utilized different aspects of D&D, right? So like with the history of alignment, we went through every single alignment, how each edition defined it, how they used it, how DMs were supposed to punish and reward it. Same thing with like leveling. We did a whole episode of, the history of leveling, how XP was given out, how DMs were supposed to calculate it, how the expectations of players. So yeah, we do all that kind of stuff on Fridays. And then usually on the weekends, once a month, we'll do our community stream, which is going to be tomorrow. And yeah. So again, sorry if you came to us late, but I hope that you do join the Discord. I hope that you, you're following. So I hope that we see you again soon. And yeah, we will be very much appreciated. But otherwise, that's going to be us for tonight. Awesome. Thank you so much. Can you make sure they just joined the Discord? So can
Perfect. I will hook it up.
Yep. So we'll get you set up. We'll just have to make sure that you have all the right permissions, and then you'll see all the chats in there. So can you just make sure St. Vincent gets set up, and we will be happy to have you. Otherwise, yes, that's going to be us for the rest of tonight. I hope you guys had a great week. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend ahead of you. We are going to be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time tomorrow morning with subletting subclasses. Oh, and as Kage brought up, quick mention on Monday. So normally, previously, Mondays have been 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and Fridays have been 7:30 Pacific Standard Time start times. We are going to continue Fridays, 7:30 Pacific Standard Time. That's not going to change. Due to the change in schedule with, just it getting darker earlier, and with just personal schedules, slight change to Mondays. We're going to start a little earlier. So normally we didn't start until 7:30 or 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. We're going to start pushing that. Do we want 5:30 or 6?
I was thinking 6.
Okay.
Because that'll probably be the earliest I'll be able to make it over here.
Gotcha. So starting this Monday, we're going to try to shoot for a 6 to 6:15-ish start time. And that will give us just that extra hour to hopefully get through some stuff and not go until, 10, 11, 12 p.m., which is kind of been recent what we've been doing, and we need to cut down on that a little bit. Streaming until midnight on a work day on Mondays is pretty harsh. So we're going to try to cut that back. So just keep in mind, we'll also post this in the Discord over the weekend, but Monday streams, we're going to try to push it closer to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in order to accommodate our schedules, but Fridays will not change. Community streams are still up whenever we can. And yeah, that's going to be it. So that was our biggest one. I hope to see all of you tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to it. This has been the series that I've been wanting to do for the longest time. So I'm super glad that y'all voted for it. But yeah, anyway, I hope you guys have a great night. I hope to see all of you tomorrow. Have a fantastic weekend, y'all. I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves and your families. And yeah, just be good, everybody. Everything's gonna be all right. So we'll see you guys all tomorrow. Have a fantastic night, guys. Cheers.
This is my friends.